The main character of this story is a young guy named Hank who comes for an interview. He is asked attentively how old he is, to which he answers without much shyness that he is 17 years old. The head of the HR department, who has been carefully studying his resume all this time, is very surprised to hear this figure. He looks up at him to gauge how serious he is, and Hank looks away, embarrassed. His interlocutor says that working teenagers are indeed a rarity. After that, he says that their organization is very elite, and Hank should understand this. Hank happily announces that he has a special certificate that should help him. Hank also says that he has good violin skills, but is told that it is not important. They explain to him that in order to work for them, he must be good with one of these things. Hank looks closely at the box that is opened in front of him and realizes that these are toys for adults. Hank asks what all this means, after which his interlocutor calmly lists the assortment. The young man recoils in surprise and wonders why he is being offered something like this. His interlocutor states that they hire men for public relations, and therefore, such demands are logical. Hank says he has no intention of selling his body, so he leaves to avoid embarrassment. A handsome man in glasses watches him go, then suggests that he stop for a moment. He says Hank seems to have the wrong idea about their profession. After this, he emphasizes that this is normal, and that Hank simply does not realize all the difficulties that arise in life. He assumes that in a few years, Hank will no longer look at it with such views and priorities. The man opens a mirror and recommends that Hank look at his face, as it is quite beautiful now. After this, he adds that if this beauty is not maintained, it will soon fade and youth will be lost. After a short pause, he hands him a small gift and calls it a top-quality product. He says something with a soft smile. After that, he ingratiatingly says that they don't have enough people like Hank, so he should think it over carefully. As soon as Hank leaves the office, the man says he will wait patiently for their next meeting. Hank stares into space, irritated, wondering what he should do next. He understands that the adult world is a pretty harsh thing, and he never wanted to face it so early. He takes the tube that is handed to him and says that these people think too much about themselves and the high school students. After this, he looks at the tube and realizes that if this thing is a high-quality product, then perhaps it can be sold. He decides not to rush to get rid of the item, then puts it in his pocket and leaves. We are transported to the city of Shanghai, where our unlucky hero lives, trying to find a job. He takes out his phone to dial the number of one of his friends who helps him with his work. He calls the man Old Man Yan and reports that the recommended interview is a failure. Old Man Ian says these people are looking for good-looking guys, so he decides Hank is perfect for them. He also asks Hank if he would like to have dinner together the day after tomorrow and celebrate something. Old Man Jan also says that his daughter-in-law is being discharged, so Hank should bring some kind of gift. Hank tries to object, but after a while he turns around, hearing a strange rumble. Other people are also trying to understand what is happening and rush towards this noise. Their attention is drawn to a bright fire, as if the entire pier had suddenly turned into a giant match. Old Man Ian asks Hank if everything is okay, to which he replies that he was just out for a while. After this, it starts to rain very heavily, and Hank immediately announces that he can no longer talk. After this, he hangs up and tries to get to some shelter so as not to get wet. However, his luck does not last long, as it takes time to find the right alley. At some point, he decides it's time to take a shortcut and turns into an unremarkable alley. However, almost immediately, an unknown man runs out to meet him, who also cannot see where he is going. Hank fails to react in time to the approaching stranger and crashes into him. The stranger tries to hug him, and Hank asks in surprise what the hell he's doing. However, after a few moments, the man takes his hand out of his pocket and tries to pass him something. Hank looks at him in surprise and sees him handing him a small cube. When trying to find out what he is doing, the stranger shows his disfigured face covered with multiple wounds. A few moments later, he begins to cough up blood, after which he falls to the ground, unable to cope with the pain. Hank can't believe what's happening and is still trying to get an answer from this man. However, seeing that the man is not moving at all, he decides to check for signs of life. He quickly realizes that the man is dead, not noticing that the fish next to him is disappearing. Hank doesn't even realize that this fish is here for a reason. And then he turns his attention to the cube. After some time, the police on duty arrive here, accompanied by several medics. He goes to the police station, where he is again asked who he is and how old he is. Hank smiles and realizes that this feeling seems familiar to him, after which he asks the policeman what it all means. The police don't immediately understand why he's asking such questions, since these are routine protocol events. After a while, he sits down in a special waiting place and decides to make himself some coffee. A police officer approaches him and asks if he is okay because he looks strange. Hank says he's fine, after which the policeman is surprised at his strong psyche because he's seen a lot of terrible things. He adds that any other child seeing a person die would have become hysterical. Hank says his life isn't easy and asks if there are drugs inside the cube. The police officer replies that they have no such information, after which he thanks him for his cooperation. He adds that Hank is doing the right thing by not trying to hide this discovery from the investigation. Hank reflects that he's not a complete idiot, because after the explosions, any suspicious devices are taken seriously. After this, he remembers his things and hopes that the police do not check the diary he keeps. The police officer immediately says that there is nothing to worry about, since they do not check such personal items. Hank waits until all the necessary things are returned to him, then goes outside and sees a flash of lightning. He wonders if he has sinned against the rain god, who already hates him. Our hero is an unhappy high school student with practically nothing in his bank account. However, he needs to somehow pay for his studies and survive, since people do not eat air. Luck never turns to his favor, as he still doesn't have a proper job, no matter how hard he tries to find one. Everything would be fine, but even his only suit for performance today turns out to be ruined by the rain. However, he has no choice but to try to catch a bus and go home. He calmly enters the salon, hoping that no one will be frightened by his clothes stained with blood. After some time, he gets off this bus and waits for the next one to get home. His house is so far away that you can get bored while waiting for all those buses. Hank reflects that he doesn't complain about fate, but hopes that it will at least be fair to him in some ways. In his opinion, if justice really existed, he would be the third-generation son of a rich man. However, when he is 3 years old, his father dies, and after this, his mother begins to lead a dissolute life. The family's property is squandered, and the mother takes the remaining money and disappears in an unknown direction. She leaves him alone, except for the countless creditors who still haunt him. However, behind all these thoughts, he doesn't even suspect that he is becoming part of something much larger. The announcer announces that the bus is arriving at the final stop and recommends that everyone get off without delay. Hank fears that he will have to become a vagabond, wandering like a homeless dog. But he still has a home. However, this house is an almost abandoned building in which no one lives except our hero. Once inside, he reflects on the fact that the real miracle is that he has managed to survive to this day. He not only survives, but also reaches the stage of life where he can, through his own hard work, enter a university. If he manages to find a job that will bring in good money, then his life will gradually begin to improve. Hank falls exhausted onto the bed and says that everything will be exactly this way, because it simply cannot be any other way. Finally, he wonders again whether life will always be this painful, or whether it is all just a matter of an unsuccessful childhood. After a while, he takes out his phone and discovers that he has already received 90 messages. These messages contain numerous photographs taken by concerned creditors who are monitoring him. Hank tries to fight them off by writing that he has no money and no desire to communicate with them. However, as if that weren't enough, a large rock flies into his room and breaks part of the window. Hank stares at the broken glass for a moment, letting in a huge amount of water. After this, he angrily declares that now thieves have taken a liking to him, and he will have to fight them off. He turns to the invisible being and says that if he has the opportunity, it can simply kill him. Hank knows he's had enough, so he says he wouldn't care if lightning struck him right now. A moment later, lightning does indeed strike just a few meters away from him. The explosion is powerful enough to knock him back from the shockwave and fear. He peers out from under the bed cautiously, wondering if it's really working. He asks the god of lightning to stop joking like that, adding that he has no complaints. After this, he takes out a small book that has been nearby all this time. He wonders if he should do anything else besides keeping this diary. He reflects on how his life differs from that of an ordinary person in that he acquires too much junk during this time. He is surprised that this book does not rot. It is impossible to lose, burn, or even get wet. He asks himself what will happen to him if someone sees this book, hoping that this will never happen. Opening the diary, he says he didn't expect to find entries written in such an old-fashioned style. Afterwards, he checks the weight of the book and says that today it seems thicker to him. He looks closely at the pages and discovers their descriptions of the lives of various people. Hank wonders if the book is somehow activated by a thunderclap. Smiling, he says that his artifact is finally starting to work, and that now he will finally be able to rise above everyone. However, after a few moments he becomes ill and begins to quickly lose consciousness, falling to the floor. During another flash of lightning and a clap of thunder, a large silhouette of a bird appears above his bed. A few seconds later, he comes to his senses and discovers that someone is sitting next to him and kicking him in the back. The boss asks in a loud voice if he really dared to fall asleep on the job again. Hank loses his footing and falls to the ground, unable to cope with the powerful momentum of the blow. Hank tries to get up, after which the boss tells him that his orders are to guard the entrance, not to sleep. He also adds that if he sees anything like this again, Hank will be fired immediately and left in debt. A beautiful girl immediately approaches this man and advises him to calm down. Hank quickly takes out his cigarettes and decides to smoke a little, saying that he is very unlucky. After this, he turns around and notices a strange man in front of him, after which he asks what he wants. A few moments later, the man makes a sudden movement and inflicts a serious wound on him. Hank slowly looks down and notices a huge amount of blood dripping onto the floor. He tries to stay on his feet, but his strength is rapidly leaving him, and he realizes that he is dying. A few moments later, he falls and sees a strange human silhouette in front of him. The monster moves on, and on its face is a mask resembling a mutated monkey. Meanwhile, we are transported to a completely different place, over which thunder is also heard. An unknown man receives an important call on his phone and realizes that it is time to act. After this, he moves forward through the giant mansion, not meeting any of the servants. After waiting for a while, he carefully knocks on the door and announces that a Class C alert has been declared. There is no one in the room except for a beautiful girl who is lying on the bed and thinking about something. She slowly opens her eyes and then orders her butler to help her get ready. Immediately after this, she rises up on her elbows to look around this gloomy, empty room. The servant gradually helps her put on her shirt and everyday clothes. She is also given a special cane because she is disabled and cannot move around on her own. They ask her if she will freeze outside, and the girl replies that she needs to take a cape with her. Immediately after this, they get into the car and go to the crime scene to find out everything. The servant carefully opens the car door so that the girl can get out. Almost immediately, one of the detective agency employees runs up to her and looks at her carefully. The girl calmly asks him about what happened here, to find out what he will have to work with. He says this is a very specific crime, so he immediately turns to the astrological community. Instead of further explanation, he simply escorts her to the crime scene, where several bodies are already lying. The girl wonders if there are any survivors here, and he immediately shakes his head. After some time, two medics approach the girl, offering her to sit in a special chair. After a few moments, she sits comfortably in it so as not to experience excruciating pain in her leg. After some time, she tells them to take her ahead, adding that she has never been to a brothel before. After the doors open, they enter the room and discover a huge amount of blood there. The investigator tells the girl that this is a bathhouse center that has just recently opened. He also claims that customers, employees, and a security guard are killed on the spot. He also says that they will learn about this brutal crime from the courier. He notes that due to the traffic situation, they can only arrive at the crime scene an hour later. He also claims that the police station in the area is also being attacked. The girl looks at the corridors and discovers a huge number of corpses and blood. She asks if they have any CCTV footage and is immediately shown the investigation materials. He says they are only able to obtain a few fragments of video footage. He also emphasizes that these videos were not made in the center itself, since all the cameras there were destroyed. The girl carefully looks at the camera footage and wonders if this is all that can be captured. She also asks whether there really were no casualties in the attack on the police station. The man replies that there are no victims because the monster breaks into the evidence room, where there is no one. He also claims that there is a video recording from there in which one can partially see the monster's face. The girl carefully studies this video recording to remember any features of the creature. The girl looks at the object that the creature is holding and wonders what it is. The investigator says they cannot identify the item exactly and only know that it belongs to a prisoner. He adds that the prisoner's name is Lucas, and that he is a very heavy drug abuser. He also says that this man was found dead the day before, and that shortly before that he visited this bath complex. The girl recalls the recent explosion and notes that it seems like a very strange coincidence. He also says that the brothel the man visits the day before his death is found to be covered in blood. She assumes that all these events must be connected with the thing that is in the criminal's possession. She also says that she is the last to know about all this, and her assistant immediately apologizes to her. She says it's okay because no one would like to be bossed around by a young girl. She also says that it doesn't matter now and asks who exactly finds this body. Investigators respond that a teenager contacts them and reports what happened the day before. After this, they hand her Hank's personal file, which has no distinguishing features other than his place of residence. The girl carefully studies this personal file and tries to understand how this person can live so far away. Hank, meanwhile, is transported to an unknown place, where he happily washes his hands and enjoys life. After this, he turns around, hearing extraneous sounds, and tries to understand where they are coming from. He approaches the door and discovers that a huge amount of blood is starting to spurt out from below. Things like this begin to frighten him as the door begins to slowly open. A strange face, which definitely does not belong to a person, immediately begins to peek out from the open door. The monster smiles furiously and looks at its future victim, gradually moving closer and closer. After a few moments, he completely closes the distance between himself and Hank only covers his face in horror. A few moments later, he wakes up in a cold sweat from intense fear and looks around. He wakes up so abruptly that he can't even stay in bed and immediately falls to the floor. Hank wonders what the hell that was, assuming it was a dream. However, this dream can be called a series of nightmares, because he is killed several times. Getting to his feet and climbing back onto the bed, he says that this seems very strange even to him. He tries to understand whether he is dreaming about this because of the dead man whom he recently saw during the day. He assumes that, as far as he remembers, he definitely doesn't die from a stomach wound. So this is very strange. After this, he decides to calm down and says that there is no need to worry about it now, and that he just needs to go wash up. After this, as if nothing had happened, he approaches the door and carefully opens it, unaware that he is not alone. As soon as he opens the door, he finds a huge number of people with guns pointed at his face. Hank immediately raises his hands and says that there is no need to shoot him, because he is their ally. At this point, we are transported to another place and find an equally handsome young man in a beautiful house. This young man scratches his head, thinking about what happened last night, and realizes that he had a lot to do. After this, he goes to his wash basin and discovers traces of passionate kisses on his body. Smiling, he realizes that apparently yesterday's sister is turning out to be too assertive. In order to find out what happened yesterday, we briefly travel back to the evening of the previous day. This handsome man spends the evening in an expensive cafe in the company of another girl who is interested in him. She asks him what kind of girls he likes, and he immediately replies that today he belongs only to her. However, this girl says that in fact he is one of those people who will forget about her tomorrow. After this, she sadly looks into a glass filled with wine and watches her reflection. Within moments, she throws caution to the wind and immediately presses herself right against him. He says that today she will prove to him that women can also play with other people's feelings. He gently places his hand on her face to calm her down and open up to him even more. He immediately confesses to her that his soul belongs entirely to her. But at the same time, he notices something else. He notes that he feels like she deserves something more after such a hard life. Looking at him, the girl begins to cry, as if he has managed to press on her most painful points. She immediately throws herself into his arms, and he says that she doesn't need to suffer so much because of scumbags. He also recommends that she get a good night's sleep tonight so that she will have more energy tomorrow. After that, we come back to the present moment, and he reflects on the fact that his name is Lindsay, and that this is his job. He reflects on how, after spending so many years in nightclubs, he has literally learned to see right through people. However, recently his affairs have not been going well due to the current circumstances. His delicate body can hardly withstand the influence of wind, frost, snow, and numerous rains. Last time, he even interviews a promising newcomer, but it doesn't bring any success. Logging onto social media, he reflects on how being too popular is also a kind of sin. After a while, his phone starts ringing and the number indicates a certain Mrs. Irene. Lindsay realizes that this girl is one of the few people he truly fears. He wonders why this investigator can do whatever she wants. After a short pause and gathering his strength, he picks up the phone and says that he hasn't seen her for a long time. However, The girl immediately tells him that he must go to the office to do special work in 15 minutes. Lindsay realizes that he wouldn't be called for something trivial, which means he really needs to be there. After some time, he gets to that very office for special work, which does not look very remarkable. The girl who is dialing him on the phone decides to take a short break. Mrs. Irene, who calls him, is the same investigator we see earlier. Hank is brought in for questioning, where he is asked his name, to which he immediately answers. After some time, he is asked how old he is, and he begins to get nervous because it seems familiar to him. One investigator says that it is better for him to answer their questions as honestly as possible. He asks him where he was last night, and Hank says he already told them about it. He begins to complain more and more loudly, adding that he no longer understands what they want from him. After some time, a brilliant idea dawns on him as to why he was dragged here. He suddenly jumps up from his seat and asks if they are really recruiting body traders here. The investigator breaks his pencil due to severe stress, as interrogating this man is difficult. Irene says she's getting tired of this interrogation because they can't get a clear answer. The investigator says this is the only lead they have, so they'll have to follow it. Meanwhile, Irene says that her trump card is finally arriving here, and now the interrogation is going easier. Lindsay walks into the office and wonders what kind of lost lamb is waiting for him here. After a few moments, they look at each other in complete bewilderment. Lindsay looks at the protagonist with irritation and asks what the hell he is doing here. Hank assumes it's a setup and immediately declares that he will not sell his body. Irene understands that now this boy is further tarnishing his good and honest name with his behavior. Meanwhile, Hank starts yelling that as soon as he gets to his phone, he'll tell everyone everything. After this, Lindsay takes off her glasses and holds her finger up to Hank, asking him to look at it carefully. Hank initially refuses, but then notices Lindsay's brightly shining eyes. A few moments later, he and the guards nearby find themselves in a state of hypnosis. Hank says with a loving tone that he is very glad that Lindsay is getting to him, and that now they are ready to go to work. Irene says that she is currently interested in something else and asks to answer a few questions as honestly as possible. Hank immediately nods and says that he is ready to even tell him his bank card number. Lindsay smiles and says that there is no need for that, and asks where he was last night. Hank says he just falls asleep at home, has a few nightmares, and gets really scared. He also states that it rained heavily yesterday, so he does not risk leaving his house. Lindsay looks closely at this information and asks him what is inside the box. Hank says that yesterday he was almost scared and didn't even think about opening this box and trying to find out anything. Irene concludes that there is no point in asking any further questions, and that the boy should simply be let go. The investigator states that Lindsay has the ability to charm, but it only works on ordinary people. Irene acknowledges his concerns, but states that Lindsay would have definitely seen through the deception. After this, she adds that she sees no point in further questioning and orders him to be released. The investigator tries to object, but understands that there is no point in doing so. Finally, he glances at Hank again to see if this man is truly ordinary. After some time, he is calmly released into the street, but his soul is clearly torn. He begins to be overcome by a feeling of unpleasant and sticky nausea, which only intensifies with each passing second. He tries to understand what they are doing to him and hopes that something like this never happens to him again. He also briefly remembers that the thing he interacted with yesterday really does look ominous. Looking around, he realizes that all this time he has been asked about where he was last night. This kind of close attention makes him wonder what is going on between them and why they are so interested in it. As he walks down the street, he reflects on the fact that, if he thinks about it, he falls asleep almost immediately after returning home. Then he starts having this strange dream. And in the dream, he is a security guard at an entertainment center, the name of which he does not remember. After a while, he stops and tries to understand what kind of strange feeling is arising inside him. He reflects on how, for some reason, this place seems very familiar to him, as if he had already been here. After a while, he decides not to bother his head with it and calmly wait for his bus. He even sits down on a bench to wait out the intensifying rain and not get wet. After some time, he feels ill and realizes that this simply cannot be. He notices the very same bathhouse center that is in front of him, but understands that this is just a coincidence. A few moments later, he hears a voice that says that the people in this building are dead and that he will die too. After a while, we are transported to a deserted corridor that looks quite ominous. One of the doors in this corridor opens, and that same monster comes inside. This creepy face looks around to make sure everything is safe. After some time, a man appears in front of him and asks about his progress. Instead of answering, this monster throws his bag forward and then takes a few steps forward. The man immediately rushes to the bag to open it and examine the contents. However, to his surprise, he discovers that the thing is practically empty. He asks what happened, and the monster states that when he gets her, she is already like this. He also states that he hardly has the abilities that would allow him to use this thing. The man, who is a priest, tells him that he should not forget that he was paid. The monster says that he does indeed take money for his work, but this can be considered atonement for sin. Smiling, he says that if they had supported his decision, his subordinates would not have gone against him. He also recommends that he calm down and think about how to begin to correct this situation. The priest asks him if Leon encounters any special people during his work. The monster says that he kills everyone who gets in his way, so nothing unusual happens. However, the priest insists and says that perhaps he is missing someone along the way. He loudly demands that he find out who else is touching this box and how they interact with it. Meanwhile, Hank continues to listen to the dire prophecy that his fate will be unenviable. He turns around sharply to find out who is here and who is trying to whisper something to him. However, there is no one around, and he realizes that he is left alone in the middle of the metropolis. He immediately looks around to find out what all this means and who is talking to him. The only thing he notices after a long period of observation is a raven that settles comfortably on a pole. This raven seems a little suspicious to him because there is a strange pattern on its body. After this, he calms down and reflects on the fact that these words definitely cannot be spoken by a raven because it is just a bird. After a few moments, the raven says that there is no need to worry as he is not harming him. The raven also says that he is really talking to him and that this is not another nightmare, so there is nothing to be afraid of. Hank still looks at him and asks if he can really talk like a human. After this, he begins to make claims against him, saying that he is some kind of unearthly rubbish. The bird suddenly becomes sentimental and says that it has been watching him all the time. Hank watches her silhouette closely and realizes that she really does look like the creature from the book. He asks her if she is really the embodiment of the very diary that has been next to him for many years. Raven says that in a sense he is right, and that she can indeed be regarded as the embodiment of the book. However, she immediately makes a reservation and says that she is only a fragment of something bigger, but she has little strength. After this, the raven says that if he continues to confuse her with creatures from the kingdom of heaven, it will look funny. After that, she flies past him, and Hank watches her in surprise, trying to understand what this all means. Raven says that it doesn't matter who she is now and asks if he can trust her. Hank says that thoughts of his death make him go into a stupor because he already dreams of something similar. Raven says that the diary entries tell of people who have recently died. This information pierces his consciousness like a lead bullet, and he understands that all this was not accidental. After this, his whole body begins to tremble, and drops of cold sweat begin to run down his face. He falls to his knees and wonders if this was all just a nightmare, and if these people are really dead. The raven says that everyone who saw the box except him is dead, and that there were many valuable things inside. The raven also says that in honor of their meeting, he can help him in his future endeavors. After this, she looks at him with great curiosity, seeing him as a potential ally. After some time, he returns to his house to collect various supplies. Hank lists everything he manages to find, saying that everything else has long been at home. He also states that his accounts are empty and that he is deep in debt, so he does not understand why he bought all this. Raven says that all this is necessary for the sake of alchemy, because it is not so easy to create stigmata. Hank asks her in surprise if she really wants him to become an artist with a hole in his hand. Raven says that this is not at all what he imagines in his head, and that the stigmata is not just anything. She emphasizes that this is an ability of the soul that so-called ascending people possess. Hank asks if miracles exist in this world, then gods also exist, and the raven replies that that is how it used to be. After this, she looks out the broken window and falls silent for a while, plunging into a sudden melancholy. After this, she says that now all the gods are dead, but now it does not matter, because they disappear into the river of time. The raven also suggests that perhaps soon there will be no memory of these creatures. Hank says that he doesn't understand everything, but he wants to help these unfortunate people. Raven turns to him and says that this is exactly the goal, and Hank immediately agrees. After this, he plunges into long work in order to create these very stigmata. At a certain point, he has to sacrifice some of his blood to imbue the solution with power. The Raven says that it may seem like an empty trinket, but in fact, it is not. From her point of view, even the simplest stigmata cannot be created using ordinary fire and metal. She adds that in the future he will create more advanced stigmata, but for now, he will make do with basic ones. After that, he takes out his phone and looks at the clock, realizing that he doesn't have much time. Raven says that he only has one chance to create stigmata and it cannot be missed. She also adds that he simply doesn't have the money to start all over again if he fails. Hank realizes that he really only has one chance of success, and then decides to mix the solution. Having completed the necessary procedures, he lays out the sheets of paper to double-check everything and begin the ritual. Hank looks at the energy waves rising up and wonders what it is. The Raven speaks of the source of matter, and that when it begins to burn, its soul is revealed. The Raven also says that when he doesn't have enough material, he can only work with flame. Hank learns that the soul of this material burns away at that very second. But this is a necessary sacrifice for their goal. After some time, a frightening thought comes to his mind that there are human souls inside this box. Raven tells him not to think too much about it and suggests that he start immediately. Hank decides to obey the mysterious creature's demands and pours a small amount of the solution into a bowl. After this, a completely different level of energy begins to emanate from this bowl, which takes on a bluish tint. It creates a bright flash that can illuminate the entire house, even if only for a split second. Hank feels that if he doesn't close his eyes and cover them with his hand, he will simply lose his sight. At this moment, the Raven says that he really hopes that he is not disappointed in him and is not making a mistake in his choice. Afterwards, she flies up to help carry out the ritual and achieve Hank's goals. Strange vibrations continue to occur above a small cauldron in which a bright liquid is glowing. Hank carefully reaches out his hand towards the pot, causing a bright explosion. After everything calms down, Hank looks around cautiously to make sure he is still alive. The room remains surprisingly untouched, and all he gets off with is a slight fright. The contents of the pot begin to glow even more brightly, as if something is moving it forward. After a few moments, the contents of the pot begin to fly upwards. Hank looks closely at the small feathers that remain after the transformation and catches them. After looking at them carefully, he says that now this thing belongs to him, and that he has become much stronger. As if to confirm what is happening, the diary suddenly begins to open on its own to the desired page. Hank approaches the diary in surprise and discovers that he himself is now inside the mysterious book. Raven tells him that this is the last scene of true miracle on Earth that she has ever seen. She also states that he can now use the stigmata while she takes a little rest. Hank immediately takes the pen and opens the book to try it out. He decides to write something, and the touch of the magic pen instantly causes another flash. Hank clearly doesn't expect this turn of events, and doesn't even have time to shield himself from such a bright light. He falls to his knees as the shadow behind him quickly begins to resemble a winged creature. Meanwhile, we are transported to the seaport, where another high-profile crime takes place. Lindsay and Irene are already at their place to see if any witnesses can be interviewed. Irene takes out her phone and reports that another body is found in this area during the search. She states that this man is also unemployed and had previously been convicted of drug trafficking. She also states that the death was horrific, and Lindsay suggests that there is more to the matter than meets the eye. He notes that, most likely, everything here has already been studied from top to bottom, so they have nothing to do here. Irene says they come here to see the scene with their own eyes and check everything. She also says that the shipping application for these containers lists electronic goods. However, she notes that if you look at the declaration, the sender is the bag manufacturer. Lindsay comes to the conclusion that the item in the box they are looking for is an important relic. It immediately becomes clear to him that so many battles have already taken place because of her, and that the last survivor received this trophy. However, he is mortally wounded, and on the way he meets the guy to whom he decides to give the reward. Lindsay suggests that Hank finds himself at the center of events due to a random and absurd coincidence. Hank again asks his ally what the name of the schoolboy they saw recently was. Irene calls his name almost immediately, and Lindsay doesn't take it quite right. He immediately turns to her and asks if this means she knows him. Irene pauses briefly and says that she has never seen him before. After a short pause, she says that there is something else that worries them very much. After a while, she shows him a small bag, and Lindsay asks what it is. Irene says it's a new drug that was created by using a certain source of matter. Lindsay immediately guesses what his ally is getting at and realizes that he is being made from an artifact. After that, he asks what this has to do with him, since he shouldn't know such details. After some time, it finally dawns on him why he is being led into such serious secrets. He turns to her and tells her that she needs to go somewhere urgently. Irene understands perfectly well that he is trying to get out of this matter, and only smiles grimly. Lindsay realizes that he must now finish this case and join the organization of investigators. Meanwhile, Irene turns around and wonders if they really need to come to the parade ground. Lindsay looks at her with irritation, unable to say anything in her defense. Meanwhile, Hank comes to his senses on the very army parade ground that the investigator had just spoken about. He looks around and feels as if he has entered some other time period. Next to him is the captain, who orders all remaining soldiers to stop. Hank doesn't make any unnecessary movements, but the man suddenly orders him to do a little sparring. Hank is trying to figure out why his body isn't obeying him, when suddenly it attacks the captain on its own. The captain responds with a sharp and quick punch right to the face to cool him down. Hank can't help but fall to the ground, while the other orders him to get up and continue. Hank rubs his face in fear before slowly getting to his feet, trying to figure out what it was. After a few moments, his soul jumps aside and he finally realizes that he is in another body. This body belongs to a completely different fighter, who is definitely not his acquaintance. This fighter has a hard time, as the captain knocks him down with all his might, not giving him a single chance. After some time, the captain calls him Chester and asks why he is so weak. Hank freezes for a second. He realizes that this man's name seems very familiar to him. The thing is that this was the name of the guard whose body he had entered earlier, which meant that he had entered his memories. The captain gives him a few more blows, after which he falls out of the body and falls below. He comes to his senses in a familiar room of the new mansion. He feels a coldness on his body as new data begins to be written into the book. Various memories that never belonged to him continue to dance around his head. After some time, he finally comes to his senses and quickly jumps up, trying to understand what it was. Looking around, he discovers that a special IV has been inserted into his arm. Looking up, he realizes that all this time someone has been carefully maintaining his condition with the help of a saline solution. He also hears the familiar voice of the raven, which tells him that they have managed to cure him of that problem. The raven takes a rather unnatural pose, not typical of a bird. Hank sits up carefully on the bed and says that in that case, he should thank her. Raven asks him if they made any progress during the memory jumps. Hank says that if the success is that he came back alive, then it is definitely a victory. He studies the recordings and hopes that he will actually gain some skills. He understands that now the abilities he possessed can only be recognized by this book. He also looks at some of the skills and realizes that he learned them in his sleep. He comes to the conclusion that through training and constant practice, he can achieve the maximum in all levels. He flips through a few more pages and discovers that the information has been erased. After this, he turns to the raven and asks her why the memories of these people appear here. The raven says that the Book of Fates is now directly connected to him and will only record what happens to him. After this, she says that there is a very subtle second bottom to this book. She says that there are reasons why information about all these people was recorded here. After a short pause, Raven says that all these people died because of him. Hank looks at Raven in surprise and asks if these people really died because of him. Raven says that in reality, there are just over 70 of them, but too few of them were able to leave notes in the book. Hank wonders if he is really indirectly responsible for the deaths of more than 70 people. He asks himself what would have happened if he had not handed over this box to the police station. After this, he turns to the Raven and asks if she would really like the box to go to him. Raven calmly says that there is nothing surprising about this, and this world is far from being so serene. She states that in reality, everything is much sadder and more complicated, since this world is not even the only one. She states that there are many things in this world that she has never heard of before and would rather not know. Hank listens attentively to his companion and tries to understand what he is getting at all this time. The Raven turns sharply towards him and in a supernatural voice asks if he has a soul. We are transported to one of the offices where sits a man who is investigating the latest crimes. This office belongs to the priest who had previously spoken with the strange monster. After some time, an assistant bursts into his room and says that they received video from the cameras. He immediately asks his assistant if he is sure that there are no traces of a break-in. His assistant says that everything was done in the best possible way, and no one will be able to contact them in any case. The priest answers the phone and says that they have done a very good job. He immediately after this carefully studies the information provided to him and makes several decisions. He says that the elders need to be informed that the service will be held every weekend evening. He also orders everyone to be called in, and the assistant asks if they are ready to change the schedule. However, suddenly, this man starts yelling at him, stating that he will not do his job for him. He orders him to come up with some excuse to change the schedule, and he says he will do everything. He immediately runs away abruptly after this, closes the door, and says that he will immediately carry out his order. After this, the priest is left alone with his thoughts and connects the phone to the computer. He manages to get hold of some recordings of what was happening to figure out where the cube went. He carefully watches the criminal who managed to take this artifact and walk a couple of blocks. After some time, he discovers that the person who encountered this bandit was Hank. The priest looks with a dark gaze at the unfortunate schoolboy, whom he does not even know. After this, he irritably grabs the monitor and says that he has finally found the main source of the problems. Hank has no idea what kind of serious mess he's gotten himself into simply because he met a criminal. We, in turn, return to the protagonist's room, where he is again asked if he has a soul. Hank smiles and says that it's a pretty obvious question since there's a simple answer. He says that he really has a soul because he wants to have money, power, and girls. After that, he pauses for a moment and says that, in fact, everyone should have something like this. The raven feigns a semblance of a smile, trying to take advantage of its facial abilities. She claims that in fairy tales, every character gets a happy ending. But in reality, things are a little different. Taking out a cigarette, she says that ascending people are distinguished by the presence of a soul in the true sense. After this, she takes a good drag on her cigarette, without fear that nicotine could be dangerous for birds. She tells that in the current era there is a creation called the Sea of Silver. She notes that its true essence is that this creation is a projection of each person. This ocean turns out to be so vast that no mind can imagine its scale. Raven says that all the wisdom of people is in fact just a small drop that is leaked beyond the edge. She also states that, in reality, it is rare for anyone ascending to rely on the astronomical community's permission. From her point of view, most of them are going through awakening as free riders. She states that this is the path he will have to take, and Hank wonders what comes next. Raven says that this path will be difficult for others to take, but he will need to use his reserves. She states that his journey will be like a rocket flight to distant and very dangerous stars. She notes that no one can know what will await him there, but if he wants to succeed, he will have to go for it. She also says that he should be put into a situation that encourages him to get the right opportunity. She also says that there will always be a couple of lucky people who can pass this test. Hank asks her what happens to people who pass this test, and the raven falls silent. Hank realizes that if he does, his rocket will simply fall to the ground and explode, wiping him off the face of the earth. The bird flies up and tells him that he should be more confident and not worry about it at all. She states that he has a unique treasure, so he should rely on it. Looking at the book, she says that having this book is like walking on a road of gold. Hank looks at this in surprise and wonders if this book is really that valuable. He asks what he needs to do now, and the bird tells him that he will have to kill someone. She hints with a smile that by killing one person, he will be able to adopt all of their skills, and it will scale. The bird states that the more people he ultimately kills, the stronger he will become, turning into a divine being. She states that he is despised by a huge number of people, and deep down in his heart, he hates them too. The bird states that his parents were also part of those people who abandoned him, and therefore this world is not suitable for him. Looking into his head, she realizes that he is truly afraid of dying and not revealing his power. Hank says that if he really has to kill someone, it's not such scary news. He briefly immerses himself in his dark thoughts and realizes that many people really deserve to die. After this, he goes through a large number of people who have harmed him greatly in the past. Each of them had a reason for offending him, but he still thinks it is wrong. Smiling, he declares that in this case, he can become a man who will fight evil. Raven listens to such thoughts with joy, trying to understand whether a villain is being born in her eyes. He notes that all of these people deserve to die, since they were all his offenders to one degree or another. However, his conscience quickly takes over, and he realizes that this is the wrong approach to what is happening. After this, he falls onto the bed to rest a little and collect his thoughts. He states that he is perfectly aware of the fact that some people may not like him, and that this is normal. He adds that sometimes some people do deserve to be punished, but none of them deserve to die. Remembering them, he says that they are the same living people as he is, and therefore, he has no right to decide their fate. He remembers the people who were in his dreams and reflects on how they, too, should not have died. He adds that even if people were guilty of something, this does not mean that they should be dealt with. After this, he sternly says that this is precisely why he doesn't like the proposal that the Raven made. He quickly rises to his feet and says that this proposal really seems crazy to him. Raven begins to feel sad, saying that she has done quite a lot for him, and he rejects her efforts. After this, she looks him in the eye and says that she has another plan in case of refusal. Hank turns to the side and asks her what this plan B is that she is offering him. The crow smiles and says that it is quite simple and was designed specifically in case he does not want to kill anyone. After this, she looks at him with a heavy gaze and says that in that case, he will have to die. The next morning, he wakes up not in the best shape, as he had been having some kind of nightmares all the time. However, immediately after waking up, he discovers that the Raven has been watching him closely all this time. Meanwhile, more and more entries continue to appear on his diary page without his knowledge. Hank loses consciousness again for a while, and the information in the book continues to update in real time. Raven watches what is happening and realizes that her charge's body is beginning to glow with energy. She understands that if they were constantly drawing energy, he would have awakened many years ago. Hank, meanwhile, comes to his senses again, but finds himself in a different place. He looks around and realizes that he is at a metro station. This seems a little strange to him, after which he discovers a book with the unusual title, On Freedom of Choice. He looks at his phone, where he has received several notifications from an unknown person. In the messages, the man accuses him of firing him and claims that they will then die together. Hank decides that this user needs to be added to the blacklist, when suddenly a subway train pulls up nearby. A few moments later, an unknown man appears behind him and tells him to go to hell. Hank is trying to figure out what this all means when he is suddenly pushed hard in the back, and he loses his balance. A train appears in front of him, approaching rapidly at full speed. The train begins to brake, but it is too late, as the man is already dead. Residents say that this scoundrel must not be allowed to escape, since he is guilty of a crime. Hank also wakes up in an unknown place, and one of his comrades advises him to wake up immediately. Hank quickly looks around to figure out what all this means and how he ended up in this place. He quickly gets up and starts walking somewhere in the company of other people. He also tries to make quick breakthroughs, but has still not seen his opponent. A few moments later, he discovers that his opponent is a strange entity from space. He quickly points his weapon at them and opens fire with everything attached to it. Together with his comrades, he opens fire on these highly mobile creatures. Their speed is on a completely different level, which is hardly accessible to an ordinary person. Before he knows it, he becomes a victim of the huge creatures that have already opened their mouths. After he blinks, he opens his eyes already on the pole to which he is tied and listens to the verdict. Hank quickly looks around and notices a large number of logs stacked nearby. There is also a man in front of him holding a torch and looking intently straight at him. Hank sees the peasants looking at him with horror and surprised by such cruel treatment. Hank reflects that this is already too serious, since he did not expect things to turn out this way. A strange man with a torch says that today he will destroy his faith, because that is exactly what he wanted. After this, he throws a burning stick forward and declares that in this case he will not miss him. Hank looks down and notices that the dry brushwood beneath his feet is igniting like a match. Before he can even comprehend the enormity of the situation, his body is already engulfed in flames. Raven continues to watch Hank's endless deaths and realizes that the book draws its power from him. She says that this may be the only person she knows who is capable of such things. After this, she decides to turn to his deep memories and replays everything that happened a long time ago. After some time, she realizes that she needs to return to the very point when he first found this diary. After she tries to look further than 10 years, she fails. After that, she looks at this diary and wonders what this man is hiding. Looking closely at the symbol, she realizes that it is a symbol of the new moon, and this impresses her very much. She notes that this is quite a rare occurrence, and then continues to look through the memories. Looking at it, she realizes that it could use some energy, but the pattern is still too weak. After that, she decides to use special magic to use the magic feather. After this, the new moon symbol appears again above the page, gradually increasing in size. She watches Hank closely and wonders if he is about to wake up already. She notes that she gave him the right opportunity, but now he will have to build everything else himself. We, meanwhile, move to another location a few hours after his power returned to him. We find ourselves in the backyard of a house, in the middle of which there is a large statue inside a fountain. Hank rubs his eyes and says that he is very exhausted and it is difficult for him to move on. Suddenly he hears the voice of a raven, who says that if he has time to complain, then he can die again. Hank turns around and says that experiencing something like this is much worse than becoming a ghost. He also says that this is a strange life, and in order to live on, he must first die. He says that school starts in 2 weeks, and he is still just as poor. Raven says that at least he has acquired a few new skills that will help him. Hank says that if he were to face that madman now, no amount of skill would help him. Suddenly he tenses up and hears a strange noise that signals that someone has broken into his place. Hank holds his breath to avoid making unnecessary noise and attracting attention. He's trying to understand why someone suddenly broke into his place and didn't expect anyone to visit. Meanwhile, Raven says that it is difficult to say who is there now and suggests investigating it. She says it's possible someone is simply trying to tap into the power grid to steal electricity. Hank asks what this all means and says that she is already connected to the neighbor's cameras to see the internet. Hank takes a long stick and says that perhaps this happened more than once or twice. With these words, they turn around and slowly head towards their gloomy home. Raven smiles grimly and says that this is indeed a very likely scenario. Hank carefully opens the door to check and immediately feels the cold rushing out from inside. After this, he stops at the main staircase and realizes that there is no one here and he needs to move on. He tries to listen to the slightest sounds to avoid falling into an obvious ambush. He reflects on the fact that there are not many men left in this family, so he will have to take care of himself at any cost. Rushing forward with a stick in his hands, he understands that if he remains bankrupt because of them, then it will be the end for him. Meanwhile, the bandits continue to search his room, annoyed that they still haven't found the cube. After this, one of them looks closely at the case the violin is in and decides to check it. Hank watches closely and understands that the situation is escalating too quickly because the violin is sacred. The robbers wonder if it's empty here too and try to figure out where the cube went. One of them suggests that there may be a layer inside that needs to be checked urgently. After this, he puts the musical instrument aside and examines it carefully. Hank realizes that this is already a red line and immediately bursts into the room at speed. He swings his arm hard and says he needs to see what it's like to get hit in the head with a piece of rebar. The bandit doesn't even have time to understand where this boy came from before he immediately receives a powerful blow to the back of the head. This blow is enough to put him out of combat mode for a while. Hank understands that while the first bandit is unconscious, he must have time to deal with the second one. However, the weapon turns out to be too fragile and breaks immediately after the first impact with the air. Hank quickly realizes that he is in a far from comfortable situation, given the current circumstances. The bandit, meanwhile, quickly realizes that while this man is in a stupor, he needs to quickly attack him. Hank muses that he should use the military hand-to-hand combat skills he learned. His body reacts on its own, as if it had always known these techniques, and he delivers a confident blow. However, this is not enough to disable the enemy. Hank decides to throw a few punches at his opponent's defensive stance, but sees no success. In the end, he doesn't even manage to get a critical advantage, after which he is grabbed by the throat. Immediately after this, he is thrown to the ground, where access to vital organs becomes much easier. The bandit says that military hand-to-hand combat alone will not be enough to deal with him. Meanwhile, one of the criminals comes to his senses and says that this damned bastard broke his head. Taking the hammer, he says he will make him regret doing it. Meanwhile, the other bandit continues to try to strangle his target so that he cannot resist. Hank desperately rips off his mask to remember his face in case he escapes. The bandit says that now that this scoundrel has seen their faces, It will be easier to just finish him off. Hank struggles to ask for help, and the Raven says that he must remember the sad moments of his deaths. She recommends that he remember how many times he died and how terrible it was. Hank wonders if there's really any point in thinking about this, since he's going to die very soon. The bandits don't understand what all this means and decide to simply finish him off with one blow of the hammer. Hank closes his eyes and plunges into another whirlpool of memories from past lives. These memories are concentrated in his hand, causing him to feel much more energetic. Immediately after this, he touches his offender's face to knock him out. Raven continues to watch what is happening and is glad that her ward has finally approached the moment of truth. After a bright flash, dust settles throughout the room, causing both bandits to stop. After this, all three of them start crying because of how terrible and disgusting their life is. One of them throws down the hammer, falls to his knees, and asks his loved ones for forgiveness for having gone down the wrong path. Another bandit says that he is not worthy of his parents because he could not even see them off on their final journey. After this, the bandit drops to his knees and begins to beat himself on the cheeks in order to come to his senses. He angrily asks what this little brat did to him and why he can't stop crying. Hank realizes that he doesn't have much of a chance to escape and bites his hands with all his might. Immediately after this, he abruptly throws his opponent to the ground, causing him to hit his head painfully. After that, he pounces on him and tries to hit him several times right in the face. The bandits continue to try to put it out, but their emotions prevent them from acting effectively. Hank throws back the opponents while he calls on his ally to finish off the villain. The criminal takes the hammer and comes closer and closer, but tears continue to flow from his eyes. After a while, he finally gathers the strength to lift the hammer, and Hank notices this. However, a few moments later, a muscular shot is heard, which instantly puts this scoundrel on the ground. Irene and Lindsay arrive at the last moment to save him and take one prisoner. Lindsay rushes forward with incredible speed and prepares to carry out her allies' orders. Hank understands that now there will be another rather unpleasant procedure, so he manages to quickly close his eyes. After a while, the bandit falls to his knees and clearly loses all desire to resist. Hank realizes that this is again that nasty ability that he once used on him. Lindsay, meanwhile, tells them that he can stop crawling like a worm and open his eyes. Hank carries out this command with disbelief, after which he discovers that everything really is over. Irene looks at him carefully and says that they haven't seen each other for a long time, and Hank is very surprised. After a short pause, he calmly greets her and waves, causing an awkward pause. After some time, they handcuff the criminals to a chair, and Lindsay continues the interrogation. He comes closer and closer to him and asks his name so that he will confess everything. The bandit says his name is Charles and asks why he is so handsome and cool. Lindsay says that someone has already messed around with his brain, so he's just a walking corpse. After some time, the bandit begins to laugh like crazy, which frightens those who interrogate him. Hank, Lindsay, and Irene watch him in surprise, trying to figure out what this all means, while he continues to laugh. He joyfully says that the Heavenly Father is here and will take him with him, which means his torment is over. After a couple of seconds, his body begins to burn like a match, and the smell of burning fills the air. Only a few seconds pass, and only a small pile of ash remains on the chair, and the ropes are untied. Hank looks at what is happening in surprise and tries to understand whether this man has simply caught fire. Lindsay angrily says that they once again have no more leads regarding the main villain. Irene says that the man is actually still alive, and as long as they have the bait, they can get more leads. Lindsay watches her and thinks that this crazy woman is too scary. He understands that while everyone thought the killer had taken the box, this girl concluded that the killer had not found what he was looking for. Lindsay guesses that she immediately assumed that the killer would look for everyone who came into contact with the box. Lindsay reflects that he somehow has too much in common with this unfortunate boy. Hank suddenly wonders if they want him dead, and there is maximum indignation in his voice. He says there is only half a month left until the end of the summer holidays, and he still needs money. Hank says he's going to break their heads soon, and Irene points a gun at him and asks if that's true. Hank says that even if he gets shot today, they will never take away his talent. A few moments later, she shows him the account, adding that she transferred him a huge sum. His fighting spirit soars, and he says that it is the duty of every good citizen to cooperate with the investigation. He also states that he should not be pitied, as he is a delicate flower, and invites them to have tea. After some time, He carefully examines his musical instrument and is glad that it remains intact. Raven appears from the darkness, saying that she can finally come out of the shadows, since she had to hide. Hank asks her why she hid all this time, trying to figure out her strange motives. Raven replies that she helped form the power in his palm so that he could deal with his opponents. Hank only now remembers that he actually somehow miraculously managed to cast a sadness spell on his opponents. Hank asks her in surprise how such things could appear in the palm of his hand. Raven tells him that she doesn't even know how to express herself correctly, so she will try to choose her words carefully. She claims that it was a kind of rare source material that was formed from a large number of deaths. She states that when he experiences someone's death, the information about it is recorded in the book and he feels fear. She also states that this is not an ability of his soul, but a kind of byproduct that is formed because of it. She notes that there is a suitable analogy, adding that it is similar to the noise that occurs when a washing machine is running. Hank asks if she can use some other, more understandable analogies, since he doesn't understand anything. After a short pause, she says that given this, it can now be called a negative energy generating machine. Hank says that in this case, he can extract not only negative energy, but also positive. The Raven smiles and says that for this to happen, happy memories must appear in his book. Hank says that he is not such a negative person and experiences the emotion of happiness quite often. There's an awkward pause between them, and he realizes how strange it sounds, and then turns away. Raven says that since security personnel have been in the house, she will have to go into hiding. She also says that for the time being, he will have to rely only on himself to solve problems. She also advises him not to delve into pre-death memories and recommends immersing himself in something new. Hank realizes that the emotions of the last few days can be beautifully expressed through improvisation on an instrument. After a while, he hears Lindsay's loud voice bursting into the room and finding only Hank there. He recommends that he take a musical instrument with him tomorrow, as it might help him in his future trials. Hank says they've already agreed to cooperate, but he doesn't understand why he needs to follow him. Lindsay says this woman wants them to be together 24 hours a day, and he can't refuse. He also says that he would also like to ask where the instrument is in his house. Hank asks him why he needs this, and Lindsay says that they need to bury the body of the second bandit in the garden. Hank expresses outrage and says that it is his property and he does not want any corpses in the house. Immediately after Lindsay leaves, he collapses hopelessly on the bed and complains about his allies. He reflects that when all this is over, he will definitely stop contacting such individuals. After this, he realizes that he has once again received the opportunity to be alone with his thoughts and play a musical instrument. Once he becomes immersed in the musical process, magical energy begins to flutter around him. Sometime after he opens his eyes, he discovers that he has become a disembodied wanderer. This seems very strange to him because he did not lose consciousness and was simply too deeply immersed in the process. After this, he decides to explore his new condition and discovers that he can walk through walls. Smiling, he says that he has passed through an insurmountable obstacle into the upper room. After this, he decides to explore the house and make sure that no one can see his body. However, it quickly becomes clear that he cannot move further than a certain limit. This boundary represents a power barrier that cannot be overcome no matter what. This force field surrounds the house where our main character is located and does not allow the spirit to leave this place. A raven watches all this from afar, sitting on a branch and hoping that no one will notice her. She feels responsible for putting up this barrier and reflects on how he should experience more pain. She also reflects on the fact that separating the source is an extremely dangerous procedure. After a while, morning comes and Lindsay bursts into one of the rooms where Hank is. Hank, in turn, looks at him with extreme surprise and tries to understand why he went into the bathroom. Lindsay grabs him by the shoulders and wonders what the hell is going on in this strange house. He claims that the hellish thing started with the sound of dripping water coming from the bathroom, and it seemed to him that someone was walking on the floor. He also complains that it all ended with the sensation of someone sighing behind his bed. Hank slowly returns the utensils to the glass and says that not all old houses are like he thinks. After this, he adds that everyone knows perfectly well that there are no ghosts in this world. Lindsay hands him a special lotion and tells him that he should be a professional and use this product. Hank looks at him with a surprised look and understands that in this situation he has no other choice. After this, we move forward a few hours, to the moment when the moon rises over this city. Hank and Lindsay help some random rich woman into her car to go about her business. Hank watches her go and then asks what this strange evening was all about. Lindsay immediately loses her temper and says that he doesn't always have good relationships with girls. After a while, he asks them to imagine how much money they received in just one meeting. Hank asks him if his wife has always made a living this way, and Lindsay decides to share the story. He says he was once caught extorting money from beautiful girls and had a gun pointed at him. The person who had already paid him and was ready to destroy him turned out to be the same Irene on whom it didn't work. However, she accused him of enjoying using his looks to deceive girls, and she says that from this moment on he loses his freedom and will only be able to become free when he returns all the money. Hank asks him in surprise how he could agree to such unfavorable working conditions. Hank remembers Lindsay's abilities and asks him if he didn't think to use his abilities. Hank states that for Irene, feelings of love and affection are just a set of sounds. Hank understands that this is some kind of personality disorder, where a person is unable to experience feelings. After this, he looks up and discovers that the crow he already knows has been watching him all this time. Feeling the protagonist's gaze, the raven immediately turns around and flies away in an unknown direction. Lindsay says they can go about their business since they have no more assignments. Lindsay also says that as compensation for the terrible evening, he is expecting an invitation to dinner. However, after a few moments, his face immediately becomes distorted with horror. The thing is, he saw a strange figure that was right behind Hank, who didn't hear anything. Lindsay immediately draws her gun and quickly takes aim, ordering her comrade to duck. Hank feels very strange, noting that he feels chills, and suggests that the Book of Destiny helped him. There is indeed a very strange entity behind him, which is approaching him faster and faster. Hank realizes that this is most likely some kind of premonition of death, and Lindsay rushes forward. Hank, meanwhile, realizes that he wants to avoid danger at all costs and orders the body to move. After this, he is hit with a powerful blow from the claws, but he manages to move to the side. Hank turns around and delivers a powerful blow directly to the face of his attacker using the stigmata. Lindsay immediately catches up with her friend and asks if he is okay. Hank loudly shows signs of life, after which Lindsay points the gun towards the enemy. Meanwhile, an unknown enemy jumps onto the hydrant and looks at them carefully. After a while, he jumps into the air, avoiding several shots that hit the hydrant directly. After this, he begins to approach Lindsay and avoids several shots that could have caused fatal damage. Lindsay realizes that in this case, he will have to use his trump card and looks closely at his opponent. After this, the monster falls to the ground, and Lindsay deals a serious blow that could have broken his bones. Immediately after this, he takes out his gun and quickly aims to finish off this scoundrel. The monster doesn't even have time to move before several small caliber shots are fired at it. Hank quickly gets up and says that, fortunately, the attack was in a completely different place. Lindsay notes that now is not the best time for jokes, but the situation was quite ridiculous. Hank looks at the destroyed hydrant and wonders where the utility workers are looking. Lindsay says that things could have been different, but after a few moments, the monster rises. Hank can't believe that this monster came to his senses so quickly and tries to figure out where he is. The next second, the lantern is destroyed, after which they are plunged into pitch darkness. Hank realizes he needs to do something urgently, and Lindsay screams that they desperately need light. Hank says he's unlikely to be able to get them any fancy flashlights. He rummages through his bag, finds one of the phones, turns on the flashlight, and immediately throws it towards Lindsay. However, a few moments later, the phone is destroyed, and Hank realizes that things have gotten worse. After this, he pauses for a moment and throws another phone, but it is also destroyed. After this, he quickly starts rummaging through his backpack to find a few more phones. Lindsay, meanwhile, opens fire on an enemy who is jumping somewhere near him, but is unable to hit. Hank feels a chill creep up his forehead as the situation becomes too tense. Lindsay urges him, but he states that now is not the time to rush him. After a while, he throws one of the objects, which flies towards Lindsay, and the monster is distracted by it for a second. He makes a sharp jerk towards the object, causing its silhouette to become blurry. He smiles nastily before delivering a sharp and swift blow, but it turns out that he has destroyed the trinket. Hank, meanwhile, dumps other items he found in his bag onto the ground, which are of little use. Hank states that it would be better if he just ran away and asks what this nonsense is. And immediately after that, he decides to use everything he found, even if it's face creams. He also says that eye cream and restorative cream will be very important now. Lindsay asks him if he can throw anything useful, and Hank states that he doesn't have many options. At a certain point, Lindsay jumps forward, realizing that one of these items is actually very important. This item turns out to be a small mirror that can be used for subsequent attack. He smiles and says that it is a special mirror that has a backlight that can be used to aim at a target. Smiling, he says that now this monster will definitely be able to appreciate its own reflection. The monster doesn't have time to react and immediately falls under the waves of this terrible spell, which affects his consciousness. However, despite this, he understands that he must act before his consciousness becomes completely clouded. Immediately after this, he makes a quick strike with his claws directly into his own eyes to blind himself. Blood splatters across the floor, and the creature's loud scream of unbearable pain echoes through the alley. Immediately after this, the monster prepares to pounce on its opponents, relying on its other senses. Hank and Lindsay realize they won't have time to catch their breath and need to keep shooting at it. However, this monster turns out to be much more agile than they initially thought, and he leaps into the air again. He manages to dodge several shots and even lands one punch that knocks Lindsay down. This blow turns out to be far from harmless, but the monster still plans to destroy them both. Lindsay assumes that this monster has gone mad, so it is necessary to get out of the way immediately. Having made a quick and correct decision, he grabs his comrade and immediately jumps to the side, hiding behind the wall. The monster, meanwhile, strikes the ground around itself several times in the hope that it has reached its victims. After this, he decides to rely on his sense of smell to find those who are still alive after this attack. However, suddenly behind him he hears the strange, indifferent voice of Irene, who came here for some reason. She looks closely at her opponent and seems to be completely unafraid of his agility. On the contrary, a person in a wheelchair shows more courage than all the healthy people around him. The monster doesn't understand what's happening and immediately rushes forward to get rid of the witnesses. He is already raising his giant clawed paw to deal with her in a few seconds. However, before he can strike, he is hit by a series of powerful shots. It turns out that Irene carries a special weapon built into her chair. The monster receives an extremely large number of bullet wounds, but this is not enough to kill it. He quickly gets to his feet, but another large caliber bullet immediately hits his body. One large caliber bullet is followed by several more to ensure the neutralization of the target. The monster loses several limbs, and this should surely stop it at least for a while. Hank and Lindsay look at the body in surprise, trying to figure out who fired all those shots. Special Forces snipers watch their target closely and say it has been hit. However, after some time, this monster begins to move again, as if it is impossible to kill. His speed returns to its maximum value, allowing him to dodge bullets. Despite the sniper's masterful work, they still fail to inflict serious wounds on him. The movements of this monster become like a shadow that instantly moves from one place to another. Hank and Lindsay watch in horror, trying to figure out what to do. However, despite everything, it becomes clear that the monster was at least forced to retreat, which means they are safe. Irene stops next to them and looks closely at their condition to assess the damage. Lindsay says they have been under constant sniper fire for the past 2 days. Irene says that all this time she assumed that they would be able to cope with this task on their own. With a semblance of a smile, she says that she didn't expect Lindsay to lose her strength in the dark. Immediately after this, she asks if he managed to discover anything interesting and important. Lindsay says the creature's spiritual abilities still remain a mystery to him. However, he states that this man most likely possesses the stigmata of the chimera. He notes that it appears that this man has only recently reached the etheric level, which is why he is unable to fly high. After this, he begins to complain about life, saying that he is too weak to fight these enemies. Irene asks him if he's found anything else, and he immediately states that that's all he knows. Irene, maintaining critical calm, addresses him, saying that she will keep him informed of events. After this, she turns around and leaves in an unknown direction, accompanied by her servants and police officers. Hank wonders if he is so strong and disliked by her that she hasn't even spoken to him. Lindsay says that he has never seen her act like other people. He also adds that this man is the biggest mystery he has ever seen. Smiling, he also states that he feels like he insulted her very badly last time. Lindsay also reflects that it seemed to him that Hank sent out a faint vibration from the source. Meanwhile, the monster returns to his home to heal his wounds and stop the bleeding from his eyes. He decides to absorb a considerable amount of energy, after which his eyes are restored and begin to glow with a purple light. Having torn off the mask, we learn that in fact, all this time in front of us, there was a man with incredible powers. The monster suggests that the Astronomical Society intervened to somehow cover its tracks. He assumes that they ambushed him and he nearly died while carrying out the task. He asks the priest, who has been nearby all this time, what he is going to do next. The priest says that there are still 6 months until the Chinese New Year, so they will have to work much harder. Due to nervous tension, he bites his fingers until they bleed and says that God will not blame them for anything. The monster asks what they should do with missions related to the immediate quarantine zone. Hank, meanwhile, wonders if he ever met Irene. After a while, his thoughts are interrupted by a glass of cool wine, which is splashed in his face. The girl starts to get indignant and scream, believing that this is a show, staged especially for her. Lindsay immediately takes control of the situation and tells him that she shouldn't be angry or pay attention to him. He also suggests that they should go out and have a drink because he knows a great place to do so. After that, he takes her away and turns back, hoping that his comrade is completely okay. Meanwhile, Hank feels his shoulder begin to hurt more and more. Still, the injuries he sustained were quite serious, and he was on the verge of death last night. Looking at himself, he realizes that his current strength is not enough to counter these threats. Therefore, he decides that until he has any guarantee of safety, he needs to be more careful. Squeezing his hand tightly, he looks up to see what he should do next. He cannot say that his difficult life has changed dramatically with the appearance of this source. Now he had at least some hope of breaking out of this situation. Lindsay, meanwhile, begins to search for him throughout the entire territory, since he has lost his faithful comrade. After a while, he opens the back door and finds Hank near the cook. Lindsay looks at him carefully and comes to the conclusion that, apparently, he was worried in vain. After that, he decides to sit down next to her and asks if he really didn't have enough money to order something normal. He is surprised that this man has not become arrogant after receiving financial assistance and still chooses street food. Hank says he can now order 2 hot dogs when he buys a hot dog, which is a whole new level. Lindsay says he received 6 criticisms on his second day on the job. Hank says it seems to be because he looks incredibly good and is held to high standards. Lindsay says he was doused with wine several times and yelled at several times. Hank doesn't understand what he should do, because he has never tried himself in this strange profession. After this, he asks if there is anything else that he should be angry with himself about. Immediately after this, he approaches the street cook and tells him to serve him another double hot dog. Lindsay says that he is a really weird guy and doesn't know whether to call him lucky or stupid. He also says that now he is taking him to a place where he can taste normal food. Hank says that he finds it hard to believe this because it is unlikely that a person like Lindsay has a conscience. Lindsay says that he is acting as his bodyguard, and Hank states that they live together, and therefore everything is fair. He also talks about providing him with a large mansion and a boiler, which he uses more than anyone else. After some time, a sickly-looking woman in a small cap appears behind them. She slowly waves at him and says she recognizes him, and Hank freezes for a moment. Hank says he remembered Old Man Ian warning him that she worked here, and he feels uneasy. The old man's daughter-in-law looks closely at his hot dog and says that he probably hasn't eaten it yet. She reminds him that today is the old man's birthday, so it would be great if they had dinner at their place. After a while, they get to Hank's friend's house and look at the dumplings in the pot. Old man Jan asks him how it happened that he suddenly decided to invite himself to visit him. Hank reminds him that he was the one who said earlier that he wanted to invite him to dinner. Old man Yang smiles and says that it was just politeness and shouldn't be taken seriously. Hank reminds him that he was the one who pushed him into that gigolo's lair, and Old Man Ian declares that everything turned out well. He notes that he even decided to call his colleague. And now it immediately becomes clear what he is doing. The daughter-in-law turns to them with a smile and says that they can sit down at the table. Everything is already prepared. Hank and Old Man Ian turn away from each other in irritation, showing their dislike. The daughter-in-law asks why he made such a sad face. Because a dear friend came here. Old Man Ian says he wasn't paid for his work as an agent, and daughter-in-law reminds him that he deceived Hank. After some time, the daughter-in-law takes out a cigarette and lights it to get a good drag of nicotine. Hank states that smoking is not a good idea given her health, to which she replies that the illness will not go away anyway, so she might as well live a day less. Old Man Yang bursts into the room and asks her why she doesn't follow the doctor's orders and quit smoking. The daughter-in-law immediately looks at him with an irritated look and asks what he allows himself to do. Immediately after this, he leaves, and Hank says that there is no one better than the daughter-in-law in the ability to persuade. After a while, they all go outside to say goodbye to each other and discuss their future plans. Old man Jan looks at the approaching car and tries to understand why the taxi is taking so long. After this, he turns to Hank and asks if he has been bullied lately, or if everything is going smoothly. He also recalls that people came to him and asked about him last night and left money for it. Hank asks if he told them anything important, and old man Jan immediately denies it. Immediately after this, he hands him a wad of bills, and Hank guesses that he simply turned him in. Old man Jan says that he is indeed guilty, but they are currently very short of money. He advises him to lie low for a few days so that the collectors lose track of him. Hank reflects on how, after so many deceptions, the money still comes back to him. He reflects on the fact that this scoundrel's conscience has overtaken him, and that God still does not abandon him and restores justice. After this, he asks who the people were who were interested in him, and old man Jan states that they did not introduce themselves. He also states that he is not so stupid as to not look at the car, and that he remembered a couple of important details. After a short pause, he says that this car belonged to a charity and philanthropy foundation. After some time, we move to another place where a strange employee is looking for information. A few moments later, the door to his office suddenly opens and he immediately grabs his gun, but gets shot. The weapon falls out of his hands and he tries to reach for it, but is immediately stepped on. The Astronomical Council's fighters, fully armed and ready for combat, burst into the room. He asks them not to shoot and says that he will explode and wants to cooperate with the investigation. After some time, all the materials that were obtained from this person end up on Irene's desk. She notes that the charity is being used for money laundering, and that everyone is well aware of this. Irene asks how many people are involved, and someone replies that it's very complicated. He says that this foundation regularly invited people to donate money. Irene says that in this case, it is not surprising that senior management liked this scheme. One of the leaders, named Tyler, is arrested and is now giving evidence to investigators in order to mitigate his sentence. It is also possible to find out that the second leader of this sect is named Wang Li and is the main boss. She also learns that Tyler was Wang Li's apprentice and was responsible for money laundering and other work. He adds that he initially joined the group for the money and that no one really trusted him. He also says that he decided to reveal all the secrets in order to protect himself, and even talked about supernatural things. According to this man, Wang Li always carried one artifact to better deliver sermons. Tyler says he hid one box, but he still doesn't know what's inside. He also states that a pleasant aroma was coming from inside this box, which influenced people's consciousness. Lindsay immediately realizes that they are talking about the very same illegal substances from the box they have been looking for all this time. Tyler says that Wang Li has probably escaped and has most likely already transferred the money to his account. The investigator addresses him menacingly, and Tyler fearfully says that he is going to give his last sermon. Irene reflects that everything seems quite logical, but she still feels something is wrong. Suddenly, she turns to Hank and asks if there is anything else he hasn't told her yet. Hank reflects on the fact that he has too many secrets and decides to lie that he doesn't know anything. Irene continues to assess him with her eyes, and silence falls between them again. After this, she says that it is necessary to start immediately, adding that caution must be exercised. She notes that, after all, we are talking about relics, and there are rising fighters among the opponents. Lindsay and Hank exchange glances when they suddenly notice that the assistant coroner's eyes have changed. He immediately says that he would like to thank them for their help and invaluable support in this matter. Lindsay tries to figure out what this all means, her head quickly turning from side to side. Irene says that today another person will be assigned to them who will cooperate with them. The investigator says that if the two of them get to it first, it will be excellent news. Hank starts to get indignant and says that he doesn't know anything and isn't going to go anywhere. She tells them that this is just a small, optional investigation that will take a little time. Hank says that he is not ready to risk his life, even if he is offered a considerable reward. After he states that if he dies, he won't even have money for a funeral, they add a little more. Lindsay approaches him and says that this is already quite a large amount, so he needs to agree. Irene advises them to get ready to leave, after which they are immediately surrounded by officers in combat uniform. Lindsay and Hank realize they won't be able to escape from here, so they decide not to resist. Lindsay talks about how he will wait for his job and thinks about the sacrifices he will have to make to complete the mission. Hank says that he didn't sign up for these types of operations anyway, so he's still against it. After a while, we are transported to a completely different area, through which a truck with meat is driving. Several pig carcasses are taken out of this truck, already prepared for further processing. One of the people tells the driver that they need to go get something to eat at a new store that is open nearby. After this, they turn around and walk away, while other people continue to watch them. These people turn out to be suspiciously similar to Hank and Lindsay, who were changed using special procedures. After some time, they get rid of their old clothes and change again to become unrecognizable. Lindsay says that they are under the protection of the Astronomical Society, so they have nothing to worry about. Hank says he has doubts about this disguise since they will still be recognizable. Lindsay says that this is a polymer mask, so now even her own mother won't recognize them, even if she looks closely. Hank still doesn't understand how he's supposed to get inside this structure. A few moments later, a familiar ally who had not appeared for a long time begins to fly above him. Before he can say anything, the raven tells him that he better keep quiet because they are being overheard. She calls him a stupid child, adding that they have been closely monitored all this time. She adds that these people's instincts are quite good and hints that Irene suspects something. Hank is trying to figure out what all this means and how he can maintain his secrecy in this situation. Raven says that he is still under suspicion, and that she did not know this when she recommended cooperation. She also says that she has been in hiding for quite a long time, but previously held a high position in this community. After this, she immediately tells him that he shouldn't worry about it, because he has more serious problems. Saying that he had fallen into a real trap, she suddenly picks up speed and disappears into the clouds. Hank reflects on how unconvincing these words are, but for some reason he believes her. After this, he looks around to understand what exactly he needs to do. He quickly discovers an old man walking alone and realizes that everything here really is happening as it should. After some time, he suggests that perhaps this very surprise will help him to penetrate. After he sees a strange vision, he feels ill and looks around. Feeling strange, he realizes that there is something devilish about this place, and this is very convenient. Meanwhile, Irene continues to observe what is happening, and one of the employees says that their target has begun to act. Irene suggests that they zoom in on their target to see what he will do. However, a few moments later, Hank is seen calmly eating ice cream on a large screen. Irene asks herself if this guy is really that hopeless. After some time, several adults approach Hank and demand that he help them. They repeat their demand and say that it is difficult for them. Hank realizes that he has nothing better to do, so he decides to get a job as a porter for a while. Together, they deliver a rather heavy cart to the territory of a protected facility. Hank quickly looks around and realizes that something is clearly wrong here, as these people are suspicious. Once the cover is removed from the cart, it becomes clear that there are many musical instruments inside. One of them quickly takes out a trumpet and starts blowing into it, trying to demonstrate his talent. Hank claps for him and tells him that the man seems to have talent and can appreciate their performance. After a short pause, the man invites him to try his hand at music, and he agrees. Having settled himself more comfortably, he says that this time he will show the old people his magnificent game. His incredible talent truly does not allow him to lose face and instantly wins people over. The melody, which he performs with incredible dedication, carries for many meters and fills everything around. Hank quickly looks up and wonders if he has captivated all of his listeners with his skills. People stare at him with surprised looks, and then quickly surround him. Hank suggests that perhaps he did something wrong, but they claim they have never seen anything like it. One of them puts his hand on his shoulder and states that in fact one of their comrades is sick and they need a replacement. They also talk about playing the song this Sunday at church, and Hank realizes this is his chance. He assumes that if he runs away now, he will lose a serious opportunity to infiltrate. After thinking for a bit, he says that he should first have a good dinner and then go there. After some time, we are transported to the very church where Wang Ling's last sermon is to take place. Hank sneaks inside and puts on special clothes, when suddenly he starts to feel unwell. He tries to understand what is happening, because as soon as he enters this church, he begins to feel very sick. He suggests that perhaps this is a premonition of death, after which he feels a strong aura nearby. He recalls that the Astronomical Society promised him cover, and hopes that everything will work out. Hank wonders if he can just leave here because he's not feeling well. The old man begins to accuse him of the fact that Hank ate a lot for free and now shirks work. The other old men also begin to be indignant, saying that they did not expect such a betrayal. However, after some time, Lindsay, who is already flirting with others, comes to his aid. Hank and Lindsay look at each other in surprise, as they clearly weren't expecting this meeting. After this, they ask each other what the hell they are doing here, because this meeting happens very spontaneously. After some time, an unknown voice says that the main performance is about to begin. Some of the ministers advise them to hurry, since right now they will need to give their best. The church orchestra members say that now it will be necessary to look serious and not play the fool. After a while, the curtain rises and our heroes are faced with a difficult task. Grandmothers begin to dance and beat special musical instruments that resemble small drums. Hank watches his friend move and tries his best not to laugh. He understands that he needs to pull himself together. Otherwise, he won't make money. So it's better to play a musical instrument. However, after a few moments, he receives a very powerful premonition and sees a pile of corpses around him. Hank reflects on this premonition of death and tries to understand how all this is possible. After a few moments, he suddenly drops all the tools and immediately runs away, surprising Lindsay. Lindsay says she doesn't understand what happened, and Hank emphasizes that it's too dangerous here. In response to his friend's lack of understanding, he says that he shouldn't ask him questions and should just run away. After some time, he comes across a simple loader who drops tangerines on the floor. The man falls to the ground, losing his balance, and Hank realizes that he is guilty before this man. He tries to help him collect tangerines and suddenly discovers that there is a goldfish inside this man. Hank looks straight at him in surprise, trying to figure out how this little creature ended up in his eye. Meanwhile, Wang Li is in a closed room, thinking hard about the upcoming affairs. After this, he loudly speaks about the need to start right now and give it your all. The frightened assistant says that he will prepare everything, and Wang Li looks closely in the mirror. He pretends to be a kind person in order to secure his mask, when suddenly his phone starts ringing. Looking at his phone, he receives a message that he needs to leave because they have already come for him. Wang Li immediately grabs the cube and runs out of the room, looking around fearfully. Meanwhile, one of the ensemble members opens the door and asks our heroes what happened to them. She approaches him and tells him that they need to go back, and Lindsay receives an important message. Wang Li starts to run quickly to avoid being seen by those who will be looking for him. Lindsay makes a few quick movements and then finds herself right in front of Wang Li. Wang Li pauses for a long time and looks at the simple church servants in surprise, trying to understand what all this means. A few moments later, a shot rings out in the corridor, and the bullet hits the girl right in the arm. Hank warns his friend that he should be careful because this woman wanted to kill him. The pause becomes even more awkward as the women look at her grave injury. Lindsay, in turn, uses a special command to initiate the raid. The man who had been picking tangerines all this time suddenly gets up and calmly walks towards the door. Lindsay glances at him in surprise, trying to understand why he is so indifferent. This man, meanwhile, simply opens the door and walks out in an unknown direction. Meanwhile, the Astronomical Council's operational headquarters continues to analyze the situation. Irene is also at the center of this task force, monitoring the situation. Meanwhile, other people say that the situation is still relatively normal. Irene reflects that everything seems to be under control, but she is haunted by the feeling that this is a trap. She notes that in theory, this is just a minor matter involving a border artifact, but something is wrong. She assumes that everything is going too smoothly, and this causes her to have anxious thoughts. However, a few moments later, she receives a sharp notification on her phone and immediately turns around. She quickly opens the special built-in computer in her chair and takes out her phone. After this, she takes out a special card, and the assistant asks her what she has in mind. He asks if she is really going to trigger a high alert in this situation. He asks what she knows and why she refuses to share, because it all doesn't seem so scary. Irene says she might be making a big deal out of nothing, but her gut tells her not to take any risks. She then takes out a small card to place on the phone and initiate the procedure. After a few more moments, a bright beam of light begins to shine from the phone, and a hologram appears. This hologram depicts a very important person who is looking sternly at Irene, waiting for her words. Irene states her number and position, and says she wants to initiate the highest level of alert. He replies that management needs a more detailed report to justify such serious measures. Irene says she is asking for an expedited review and is told that the application is being sent for review. After this, he looks at all the necessary documents and quickly checks the feasibility of this action. He puts a stamp and says that the application has been approved and the correction of the satellite orbits begins. He also says that there are about 3.5 minutes left until it is fully ready, and states that this is all for the sake of peace. After some time, his hologram completely dissolves into thin air. Immediately after this, Irene becomes more serious and realizes that the operation is not so simple. After this, the satellites begin to move along the required coordinates at maximum speed. All this is necessary in order to conduct round-the-clock monitoring in real time of everything that is happening. We are transported to an observatory that is preparing such high-level operations. A new letter arrives through a special email account belonging to one of the employees, indicating that this is something serious. After this, she forwards the next letter further to the address, and another person receives it. After some time, we are transported to a room in which a large map has been modeled. The staff quickly restore the terrain to provide more opportunities for the commander. One of them takes out a special laser pointer to form a small circle. He introduces the ring in order to create an energy zone there that no one can overcome. After some time, similar actions are repeated in reality, forming a powerful energy barrier. Suddenly, metal rods begin to emerge from the ground, gradually intertwining into a similar network. The speed at which this barrier appears is impressive, and it is unlikely that anyone will be able to escape this trap in time. Once the metal rods form the frame, it's time for the final touches to this story. Energy begins to form near the bases of these rods and is gradually directed upwards. Over time, this turns into a large shield, through which no one will be able to break through. Everything was done specifically in such a way as not to destroy any infrastructure. Irene's assistant watches what is happening in surprise and says that the separation process has begun. Irene reflects on the fact that they don't have much time before this procedure is completed. Meanwhile, we return to that same corridor, and Hank informs his comrade about the danger. Looking at this girl, he says that she is becoming a monster. After this, the girl loudly says that, unfortunately, she was found out, and success was so close. After some time, she tears off the woman's face mask, and a chimera appears in front of them. Lindsay looks at Chimera in surprise and jumps back, realizing that he almost got seriously injured. Immediately after this, he decides to use his soul skill to subjugate the enemy. The monster freezes in place, and Lindsay fires several quick shots, snatching the gun from Hank. The shot turns out to be surprisingly accurate and instantly pierces the body through and through. Wang Li realizes that his personal bodyguard is out of action and tries to turn around to escape. Hank leaps forward to deliver a powerful blow to the villain's back and stop him. Immediately after this, he jumps right on him and starts beating him, saying that it was he who sent people to it. Wang Li delivers a powerful blow with a knife and wonders where this scoundrel came from. Due to the damage received, the facial modification technology dissolves. Wang Li realizes that this is the man he was hunting and tries to throw pollen at him. Hank wonders what it is, after which he begins to experience several hallucinations. Hank tries to understand that this is, apparently, some kind of special substance created to help find him. Grabbing him by his clothes, he delivers a powerful forehead strike directly to Wang Li's head to knock him out. He continues to throw punch after punch, saying that things like that won't work on him. He also decides to use the stigmata to instill all of the man's depression. After Wang Li begins to cry, Hank states that only the ashes of the disaster can neutralize it. After a short pause, he uses his own ability on himself to avoid hallucinations. After this, they both start crying, and Hank realizes that it will be easier for him to cope with such an impact. He grabs him by the collar and prepares to hit him right on the head again. However, after a few moments, they hear the sounds of several more shots and turn their heads. They are trying to understand what these sounds are, because no one was supposed to enter this church after the separation. Lindsay ends up seriously injured as his opponent is still not neutralized. Mozart takes off his wig and says that now he needs to pray to God in order to survive after meeting him. Lindsay quickly looks down and sees several pools of blood that have dripped down his body. He also suffered a minor eye injury, preventing him from using his ability fully. Chimera asks him if he's scared now that he doesn't have access to his tricks. After this, he rushes forward and says that he has no chance left for survival. Lindsay realizes he will have to use his physical prowess to defeat this fast foe. Once on the ground, he takes out his pistol and realizes that he only has 2 bullets to avoid screwing up. Quickly raising his weapon, he pulls the trigger and orders his opponent to die. This shot turns out to have fragmentation ammunition, so even one hit is enough. Afterwards, he claims that the special pocket shotgun that was given to him actually saved his life. Chimera tries to get to his feet, but Hank immediately fires another shot straight into his head. There's nothing left of this monster, and Hank realizes that they've actually managed to deal with the threat. Wang Li took advantage of his enemy's moment of inattention and tried to escape, but was immediately grabbed by his opponent. Lindsay takes a few quick steps towards him and lands a punch right on the back of his head. After that, he asks if Hank really received a message in advance that the target was coming here. Throwing him the gun, he smiles and says that it means she still treats him well. Hank isn't quite sure what this all means, and Lindsay throws him the phone, telling him they have 3 minutes left. Hank wonders what to do, and Lindsay advises him to act quickly. Quickly taking the artifact, he gets up and tries to run away, saying that they need to get out of here. Hank watches his fleeing comrade closely, but something begins to affect his mind. His attention is drawn to the cube he is holding under his arm, and he loses control of his body. He slowly walks towards it and says that it is a very shiny toy. After this, he gradually begins to raise the gun to aim at his comrade. He adds that no one should take away his favorite charm, and that it cannot be allowed to be stolen. Irene watches what is happening and tries to figure out what the hell has suddenly started happening. Hank quickly raises the gun and says that this thing belongs only to him and no one else. A few moments later, he pulls the trigger and fires a shot straight into Lindsay's chest. Lindsay turns around in surprise, then falls to the ground and quickly loses consciousness. Meanwhile, Hank stands in place with a very strange look, as if someone is controlling him. Irene and her assistant look at the current situation in surprise, noting its unprecedented nature. The investigator wonders what all this means and how they should deal with such a situation. Irene addresses her subordinates, telling them not to stand still and to send reinforcements. They tell her that there is currently a lot of interference, so they cannot contact the support group and direct them there. They also report that the video feed from the church's cameras has disappeared, leaving them effectively blinded. Meanwhile, Irene is trying to understand the reason for Hank's strange behavior. Hank, meanwhile, comes to his senses and realizes that he has done something incredibly terrible. He looks at the gun and tries to understand what he did and why he shot his comrade. Looking at the cube, he assumes that it was moved by some supernatural force. After some time, the cube begins to emit strange energy, and Hank again falls under its influence. He immediately grabs his head and cannot believe that he has committed such a terrible act. Hank wonders why he's still here and what he's doing in this damn church anyway. After this, he suddenly falls to the ground and spits out what has been inside him for a long time. A goldfish appears in front of him, and he wonders in surprise what it is. A few moments later, he feels a hard blow directly to his head. After he falls to the ground, he turns around and sees Old Man Yan standing in front of him, who suddenly appears there. Hank looks at him in horror as Old Man Ian points the gun right at him. A few moments later, he pulls the trigger and fires several shots into his body. A strange energy swirl appears behind Old Man Yan, very similar to a portal. A figure emerges from it, and someone says that there is a potential exalted one in front of him. He adds that this is why he resisted the influence of goldfish. And now it is not surprising. Smiling, he says that if it weren't for him, he would have taken the box long ago and wouldn't have to work so hard now. Lindsay quickly rises up on her elbows and tells Hank to try to get out of here while he still can. The unknown person says that he cannot help himself, but he can take care of other people. Old Man Jan takes a few more steps forward and holds the pistol even more confidently. Immediately after this, he brings the gun even closer to Lindsay to finally execute him. Before Hank can even blink, the man pulls the trigger and shoots straight at him. After this, he picks up the cube that is on the floor and hands it to his boss. Hank turns to his friend in surprise and asks what the hell this is. The unknown man in the cloak says that he should not blame anyone but his own difficult fate. Hank remembers Old Man Jan recommending that he get a good job. He told him it was a great idea, while he himself was already under control. This man uses goldfish to bend people to his will and force them to act according to his instructions. Hank says it was a trap and he was tricked from the start into dancing to someone else's tune. In order to find out what kind of person this is and what plan he serves, we need to go back a week. He stumbled upon the cauldron of rebirth by accident, and mastering it was a momentary whim. The original plan was very simple. It was to use his soul ability. From his point of view, it was necessary to take control of the small fish and place the big ones between them. Then, through Old Man Yan, he planned to get the box and leave without a trace, so that no one would suspect anything. They planned to use this boy as a landmark in order to grab the necessary thing in time. Hank followed exactly where the man needed to go and came across a wounded soldier. In reality, Hank was simply unlucky enough to meet him in this random alley. According to his plan, Hank was also supposed to submit to the influence of goldfish, but everything did not go quite according to plan. Hank didn't even understand what was happening to him, and immediately tried to find out what happened to this man. Even after he spat out the goldfish along with the bloody liquid, he didn't notice. The fish, having fallen to the ground, dissolved almost instantly and was unable to find a new owner for itself. The mocking fish tank is a way of splitting your primordial into goldfish. In this way, this person can subjugate the will of other people and give hidden orders. So it turns out that this guy remains hidden and elevated during times of stress, having gained immunity. In addition, it also attracted the attention of the astronomical community, which is also a powerful organization. Meanwhile, we return to this tragic scene where the fate of our hero is still in danger. Hank reflects on the fact that this goldfish was prepared exclusively for him. An unknown man says that if the end doesn't change, then what difference does it make how you get there? After that, he grabs his head and lifts it a little to examine it. He claims that he was simply unlucky, as he almost escaped death, but still could not change his fate. He also says that people with such a smile are said to play the role of losers their whole lives. Hank reflects on how fate has never really been on his side, and he has always been an underdog. He begins to be furiously indignant at what is happening and tries to understand why he is being subjected to all this torment. He feels incredible pain that permeates his entire body and does not allow him to calm down. He says that he just wanted to live a normal life and earn money so that his life would become better. He also says that he would like to find at least some kind of work, even if he has to work very hard. He is trying to understand whether all of this was also a mistake, or whether he did something unnatural. He looks at everyone around him with irritation and wonders why they won't leave him alone. The cloaked figure stands motionless and looks at him as if these words do not bother her at all. After this, she turns around and says that his sacrifice is needed for the greater good and a better world. She then orders him to stop talking and recommends that he kill the child. Hank looks at his comrade in surprise, who immediately points the gun at him and takes aim. A few moments later, a shot rings out that should send him to the next world once and for all. Hank only has time to close his eyes so that he won't be so scared, while the bullet flies faster and faster. However, after a few moments, it turns out that this bullet ricochets off an invisible energy shield. The unknown figure in the cloak turns around and tries to understand why Hank is not dead yet. He looks at him in surprise and wonders if Irene is involved. He notes that only a stigma of the 4th rank or higher can be pierced, and that this cannot be done in 3 minutes. He notes that if left untreated, he will die from blood loss himself, and says there is no point in wasting time. Finally, he orders Old Man Yan to close the door and prepare for the most important ritual. After a while, he opens the doors and church ministers run out trying to escape. Hank quickly raises his gun and fires several shots to finish off all these people. After this, he moves on, not paying attention to the fact that he has just killed many people. Finally, they come out onto a small platform and see a number of parishioners sitting in front of it. They look at him in surprise and wonder what the matter is, trying to understand why there is so much noise here. An unknown figure says that this artifact is a vessel that can enhance anything. He notes that with this number of people, it should be enough for the initial development of the sacred tank. After a short pause, he clamps the ampule, breaks its contents, and releases them into the wild. After some time, this piece rises up, and Hank comes to the conclusion that the ritual needs to begin right now. He turns to other people and talks about the need to contribute tiny parts of the great work. A huge flash occurs in a small church and immediately fills the entire space. That's why these people watch this in amazement and try to understand what it all means. But for them, it's already too late. Immediately after this, another flash occurs, which makes this church visible from a distance of hundreds of meters. After the procedure is completed, all that remains is a small pile of dried-out corpses. This energy is enough to cover a piece of bone with a small amount of skin and one whole nail. After this, a powerful energy anomaly is created, which causes steam and a hum around. The unknown figure feels this finger trying to pull energy out of him, and he has to resist. After that, he grits his teeth and realizes that he needs to focus on not giving in. However, he states that this spirit of chaos needs to be fed to its heart's content in order to become stronger. As this horrific process continues, the hand gradually begins to transform into a more tangible object. This unknown man talks about the need to absorb everything you can and open your eyes to this world. He watches what is happening closely and understands that this hand has broken through to the 4th rank. He speaks joyfully about how this is a fantastic development and that there is only a little bit left to do. After a few moments, he sees that this hand has run out of resources that can be drawn out. He understands that a separation from reality has occurred, which means that the Astronomical Council is monitoring this. He's surprised that they were able to read such a move, which means Irene really does have a head on her shoulders. The breakthrough to the 5th step of the Philosopher's Stone is just a little bit missing. Taking a closer look, he declares that this too will be enough to break the blockade. Moments later, a hand erupts from the building and pierces its roof, creating a powerful explosion. She still can't break out of this barrier, but she just needs to concentrate more energy. This is exactly what happens, after which the hand forms into a fist and rushes forward at full speed. There is a loud sound of impact, after which the energy barriers begin to crumble as if they were glass. The operational headquarters staff say that illegal border crossings have been recorded. They understand that the threat level needs to be raised even further because they are dealing with something similar. He understands that the situation is turning out to be incredibly difficult, but Irene has calculated this in advance. Meanwhile, Irene asks the others what news she has about the withdrawal of troops. However, she is told that, unfortunately, no further signs of life have been found in the area. Irene, irritated with the operator, tries to figure out what she needs to do in such a rapidly changing situation. She asks them what they are waiting for and demands that they prepare an immediate plan of action. They quickly start to think and say that they are launching an emergency response protocol. Artillery installations are quickly approaching the neighboring area and are preparing to open fire to kill. They are given coordinates and told that they need to cover the entire area, leaving no one there a chance. The shells fall like a real rain of steel, causing powerful explosions upon landing. The hand flies towards them in order to prevent all this destruction, but gets caught in the fire. The investigator says that this must continue at any cost, and that firepower must not be held back. He guesses that the hand of the wind disaster is not yet capable of withstanding such a bombardment for a long time. After this, he receives new notifications and says that reinforcements from the new reality have arrived. Irene is trying to figure out if it is really the one she was originally thinking of who is supposed to come here. The investigator states that this is the 2nd person of the Eastern region's 5th rank bloodline. This fighter is a young girl who transforms into a human from a white crow. Artillery mounts continue to adjust their fire on the moving object. Their overwhelming superiority in firepower turns the entire area into a hellish environment. Irene continues to closely monitor the situation, monitoring the vital signs of all necessary creatures. She understands that previously reinforcements were sent directly through the secret worlds. However, now the reinforcement consists of just one person, who nevertheless remains a powerful help. After prolonged destruction, a process of depriving the artifact of its powers begins to take place on their basis. He falls to the ground and then rises into the air again, showing that he has not received a single scratch. The task force concludes that they have run out of ammunition and will not be able to continue the attack. Immediately after this, the hand clenches into a fist and begins to create a giant hurricane. The task force staff reports that the blockade is weakening under the relentless onslaught of this windy fist. And indeed, if this continues for some time, they will completely lose any advantage. The iron bars, which all this time were considered practically indestructible, are gradually giving way under the pressure. A 5th rank guard reaches the battlefield and carefully assesses the situation with his gaze. Smiling, she says that she still made it to the party on time. The hand continues to dart from side to side, searching for the nearest victim to devour. Meanwhile, the 5th rank guardian is gathering strength to send forward several destructive impulses. After this, she feels that she is ready to continue the fight for real and makes a sharp dash. She makes one wind slash that flies in a cross towards the large enemy. This cut turns out to be so powerful that it passes through this hurricane like a knife through hot butter. Among other things, he manages to disrupt the integrity of this artifact and destroy it into small pieces. Thanks to this powerful whirlpool of blows, a 5th rank guardian has the opportunity to wipe the artifact from the face of the earth. Looking up at the sky, she says that it would be great if there were few victims. After a while, she receives a message and says that she is a little lost and the detection system is glitching. After this, She promises to reach the required location in 5 minutes and report on the completion of the task. Meanwhile, this unknown person received serious damage, but still did not die after the attack. He guesses that the power of the heavenly ruler himself has fallen upon him, and it is almost impossible to withstand it. Meanwhile, the snow-white bird launches another attack, targeting his location. The villain immediately turns around and tries to understand how his location was revealed, since he was hiding. The entire building is instantly wiped off the face of the earth, while he remains standing. He understands that another such attack will cost him extremely dearly, so he uses the disappearance technique. This way, he manages to avoid fatal damage, but he still feels very weak. He reflects on the fact that these monsters are now hunting him, so he needs to act faster. However, the soldiers pursue him even in the new place he has just moved to and knock down the door. They quickly run inside and say that their target has been discovered and that they need to begin eliminating it. Without further ado, they open fire to instantly neutralize the threat. The villain jumps to the side and throws down some cards to help protect him. The soldiers look in surprise at the place in front of them and discover that their target has disappeared. A few moments later, a powerful explosion occurs, which destroys this side. Almost the entire building blows up, but they don't have to worry about their lives. Meanwhile, Hank comes to his senses and sees an old man in front of him who is trying his best to help him. He carefully covers it with a cloth to make it safer to move across the cold floor. He says he has no idea what happened, but it appears that outside forces are to blame. They also say that when they return, the investor will take care of the position and financing, and then make the calculations. They also state that he must save them and take responsibility for his daughter-in-law. After that, he cautiously rolls it towards the nearest basement to hide it there for a while. Finally, he tells them that he must definitely survive, despite the fact that in his words, he already deserved to die. Hank and Lindsay continue to fall and somehow manage not to break more bones. Meanwhile, Old Man Yan gradually closes the door so as not to confront him with serious problems. Hank falls to the cold ground, then slowly closes his eyes, plunging into darkness. Meanwhile, we return to the top, to these ruins, which will soon burn to the ground. A rapid response team quickly reaches Old Man Yan and immediately takes aim. Smiling, he says that one person asked him to do something very important. With these words, he assumes a strange pose and says that the green sun will once again illuminate the whole world. This is clearly not the best tactic to act in this situation, since he is immediately shot with all available weapons. After he falls to the ground, the fish that was in his body also disappears. Afterwards, the rapid response team takes everyone to the medical center, and Irene arrives there for an examination. The fighter tells them that Lindsay was alive, despite receiving extremely serious injuries. After this, he pauses sadly for a moment and says that they were no longer able to save Hank. Irene and other researchers quickly arrive at the morgue to check his body and conduct an identification. Irene spends some time there, after which she says that in such a case it is necessary to act according to protocol. With these words, she calmly leaves, and one can only guess what this protocol means. Hank finally comes to after a while and sees a very bright lamp, typical of an operating room. A doctor appears before him and uses special equipment to bring him back to his senses. However, after several attempts to blink, he sees a very strange man in front of him. Hank finally opens his eyes fully and realizes that he is in some mysterious basement. The man who looks like a surgeon is there and says he's surprised Hank is still alive. Hank quickly takes a look around the strange room and discovers numerous preserved corpses. Hank wonders where he has ended up, noting that the place doesn't look like a hospital at all. The surgeon has no problem telling him that he's in hell, and Hank feels even more uncomfortable. The surgeon states that they are at the 12th depth, and this is his workshop where he sells trinkets. After some time, he takes out a scalpel and says that soon he too will become part of such trinkets. After this, he plunges a sharpened blade into Hank's body, and he begins to scream loudly in incredible pain. The surgeon merely places his hand over his mouth to calm him down, stating that he doesn't know how to do it. He adds that the last thing he likes in the world are patients who twitch and scream senselessly. Hank strains and tries to hold on to the surgeon's hand, trying to cope with the pain. The surgeon, in turn, says that Hank is dying anyway, so it could have been done more quietly. After some time, he begins to remove parts of the skin from it to throw them away. The surgeon states that there are quite a few people like Hank, and many of them have already ended up in hell. The surgeon advises him to be patient, since his soul has not yet dissipated. But Hank begins to resist. He says that it would be possible to come to an agreement, but the surgeon replies that he has already bought his corpse, and this does not change anything. After this, he continues his preparations to finally get rid of the unimportant parts of his body. He notes that he only has a few days left to live anyway, since he won't be able to stop. By sticking a special tag on this flask, he says that it would be better if he just died and calmed down. Hank, in turn, rejects such a prospect, saying that he cannot come to terms with it. The surgeon asks him why he suddenly thinks this way, since absolutely anyone can die. He also states that he has seen many people during this time, and they all thought that they were very important and irreplaceable. He grows irritated and declares that they all died when they got here, and the world moved on as if they had never existed. He notes that reality does not stop because a person is gone, which means they were not wrong. After this, he continues to dig around in his body and says that if you are born, then death is already inevitable. The surgeon also says that this fate also applies to the gods, since they simply live longer than ordinary people. He notes that if you've lived for 1,000 years, you simply get bored of watching what's happening. The surgeon continues to look closely at his victim and asks what to say about him then. Hank notes that these are very great philosophical words, but that doesn't make him feel any better. He smiles because he is actually a tough nut to crack and doesn't cry for no reason. And those tears are gold. The surgeon says that such things do not affect him, and he knows perfectly well that he is scared. Hank, in turn, says that he himself is not happy with this state of affairs and would like to be simply let go. The surgeon continues to dig around in his insides, saying that his internal organs have turned to mush. Hank claims that one great man lived for half an hour without a heart, and during that half an hour he lived quite well. The surgeon declares that the time for talking is past, as he has already completely gutted him. After he begins to remove the intestinal organs, he wonders what is causing the smell. Hank calmly says that yesterday he was treated to hot pot by an old trader. After this, he looks at the surgeon and asks him if he has ever tried a similar dish. He notes that the man looks like a foreigner, so he may not know that this is a signature dish of China. He also claims that the old man who treated him is a bastard who always gets into trouble. However, he concludes that the hot pot this man prepared always tasted simply divine. The surgeon continues to take our hero apart piece by piece and asks who cut him up so badly. Hank responds by saying that he has no idea about it, as he has learned too little yet. Finally, he wonders if the surgeon still wants to let him go, since he hasn't lived long enough yet. As an offer, he states that he will sell himself completely and is ready to do anything to live. He also states that he has no principles when it comes to his life, so he will do anything. The surgeon irritably says that this is pointless talk, since death is inevitable. Hank says that even if death is inevitable, he still doesn't want to die. He wonders if it is not possible to simply live to his heart's content and then go to a just rest. The surgeon is about to answer him something when suddenly a bright flash begins to blaze in the room. He immediately turns around, wonders what the hell is going on here, and figures it out pretty quickly. After this, he looks somewhere into the sky and talks about unknown forces taking him away, since he lost. He also says irritably that he doesn't want to see him anymore, because this scoundrel has gotten on his nerves. A couple of seconds later, in response to his words, a bright flash of light pierces the ceiling of this basement again. During this flash, Hank begins to rise upward, gradually regenerating the flesh, blood, and skin he lost. Once his eyes are fully restored, he finds himself in an unknown place. Looking around, he realizes that all this time he was at the bottom of the sea, which he had been told about before. This is the same Silver Sea, which is a giant ocean consisting of souls merged together. After this, he jumps out of the sea and freezes above its swaying surface, looking around. Hank realizes that he has never seen such a level of magical power before. On the surface of this sea, there is also an unknown man with a raven sitting next to him. He adds that they haven't seen their daughter for 7 years, and he's interested in how she's doing and how she's doing in school. The raven says that there is no need to worry, since she saw her just before leaving. Hank, meanwhile, begins to rapidly lose altitude and fall lower and lower. They talk to each other and come to the conclusion that the talent of playing the cello is very important. After this, the raven finishes the can of energy drink and says that she will have to leave here. The man also decides to have a little drink and says that his shift will only start in 2 days. He also says that he has been chilling here for 7 years and can relax like a human being. Varna smiles and says that this is very good news, since she was no longer planning to leave here. Immediately after this, she rushes forward to gain altitude as well. Hank carefully swims in this silver sea and tries to figure out if there is at least some living creature in it. Meanwhile, she touches the sea surface and begins to walk on it as if it were solid. With each step, her body gradually changes, after which she takes on a completely human form. A heavenly creature of absolutely incomparable beauty, dressed in black clothes, appears before Hank. After this, she extends her hand to him, and a very elegant smile appears on her face. After this, she invites him to follow her, adding that she will walk him home. After some time, they return to the same mansion, inside which bright flashes are now blazing. A huge number of pages from this book burn in a matter of seconds. This continues for some time until only one page remains, depicting the stigmata. After some time, this stigmata burns brightly, and the flame begins to spread throughout the room. After some time, we move to the medical center and find that Hank's heart is starting to beat. After some time, Hank finally comes to his senses, realizing that he was not in a hospital bed. Hank asks how long he slept, and Irene states that he slept for about 19 hours. Hank quickly looks around and realizes that the room he is in is significantly empty. After that, he asks about what happened to his friend and how he feels now. Irene says that Lindsay survived and is now in intensive care under the watchful eye of doctors. She also says that if he's lucky, he'll wake up someday, but that's no longer in her power. She adds that he was lucky to survive at all after colliding with the green sun. She also states that the customer has already left, so for him, this whole operation is already over. She also says that he can return to a quiet life, since no one will come for him anymore. Hank looks at her carefully, then asks what happened. She assumes that he probably wants to ask her about something, but all this time he was too shy to ask her. Hank says that lately he has been constantly thinking about where he saw her before. Irene is surprised to hear this strange question and freezes for a moment, looking at him. After this, she states that if he doesn't remember, it's okay, since there's nothing important about it. She also wishes him good luck in his future life, and hopes that they will not meet again. Immediately after this, the maid turns the chair around, after which it drives away in an unknown direction. Hank decides it's time to at least wash up a little to come to his senses after what happened. After a while, he looks at his severe wounds and realizes that he needs to dress up a little. After this, he opens the wardrobe and goes through some of the clothes he has inside. While examining this clothing, he discovers that a small wad of bills is falling out of it. However, after this, he decides to ignore the money and puts on the clothes that previously belonged to Old Man Yan. After this, a raven joins him, which says that he probably feels offended and sad. She states that there is really no particular reason to worry and offers him a cigarette. Hank says he doesn't believe that smoking a couple of cigarettes can fix something like that. The raven suggests that you need to take a break from all this running around and return to your desired quiet life. Hank, meanwhile, can't believe that it could just end. He becomes very sad and says that he has never been in such a bad situation. Finally, he talks about how, as a child, he once had a very high fever, the likes of which he had never had before. He adds that his parents were very angry at the time because they were on holiday abroad. They told him to go to the hospital, but he was so ill that he fell asleep right on the sofa in the living room. He also states that he had strange dreams back then, as if he had grown wings and was flying in the sky. Then he suddenly heard someone climbing over the wall and holding a knife in his hand to kill someone. Hank hides behind the door and is afraid to breathe because he is very afraid that he will be found. Hank looks at the metal fence and says that he is very scared and does not want to die. After a short pause, he says that this is precisely why he decided to finish off this scoundrel. Raven is very surprised by such words, because she did not expect Hank to be so brave. He, in turn, says that he hid behind the door and hit him on the back of the head with an axe. After this, he buried the body in the garden, which took him a lot of time and effort considering that he had a fever. After this, he lay down in bed and fell asleep as if this had never happened to him. Then he had a huge number of dreams, but surprisingly, after waking up, the fever went away. Hank says that he was really lucky, because he was afraid that someone would come and check this land. Hank also says that no one has found anything yet because no one will look for the robber. But he notes that if he had been killed then, he would not be alive now, and he feels disgusted with himself. The Raven says that he doesn't have to torture himself like this, and perhaps it was just a dream. Hank says that this is indeed a likely option, since he has not checked the body buried underground. He adds that he bought shovels many times, but then put them off again and again, not daring to check the place. He adds that every time he stood there, he hesitated because he was afraid to find out what was there. Hank admits that what he was really afraid of wasn't digging up the body, but rather finding out the truth. The problem is that if he digs up this place, he will no longer be able to deceive himself, and it will ruin his life. Looking at the rusty shovel, he wonders how he will ever return to his quiet life. After this, he realizes that all this time he thought that he could deceive himself for the rest of his life. However, now, after what happened, he understands that this is no longer an option for him. Having prepared himself properly, he says that he has absolutely nothing to fear anymore. As he drives the metal into the ground, he says that he always knew that his parents never loved him from birth. He states that after his grandfather's death, they stopped caring for him and that they no longer need him. He says with irritation that when they were alive, he worked like a horse and received no help. Now he was left completely alone and lived all these years, surviving in spite of everything. He also says that he himself understands perfectly well that such a life is not worth a dime. But for some reason, he continues to suffer. The Raven continues to watch him quite closely and does not dare to interrupt his heartfelt conversation. Hank states that his life remains consistently terrible, despite his attempts to change it for the better. Finally, having spoken out, he says that he must be strong and endure everything, no matter what. He notes that as long as he continues to move forward, everything will gradually improve and return to normal. He says that as long as he has people who care about him, he will feel at least some support. He also realizes that all the friends he tried to get close to are now either dead or in a coma. After this, he feels growing anger and says that he will not give up so easily. With these words, he makes a few more movements to dig up what was buried in the ground. The Raven looks at this scene in surprise and realizes that the shovel simply broke, unable to withstand the strength of the object. After that, she sits down next to him so that they can look together at what has been buried here all this time. It turns out that there is a special spiritual axe buried underground, which has been waiting all this time to be retrieved. Hank takes this axe and makes a promise that he will finish off this scoundrel and avenge his comrades. Raven says that he has broken through the barrier between spirit and matter and can now interact with such weapons. She notes that this 7-year pause in murderous intent and death was able to take on material form. Raven says that he received a gift from the Silver Sea called the Hand of Imprisonment. After this, he returns to his home to devote long hours to planning. Hank turns to the Raven and asks her if everything will be okay, fearing that something might happen. Raven suggests that clues can be found through the Book of Fates, but this is a rather risky undertaking. He says that in such a situation, one has to resort to not entirely reliable methods. Hank says that this book works on a principle similar to a computer, but it has a security system. He adds that during this procedure, there is a risk of getting a serious infection while in this space. Hank asks if it is possible to die during this process, and Raven states that it is a possibility. Hank says that such a death is nothing new to him, since this is his normal life, so he is not very worried about it. Raven says that with this attitude, she cannot worry about him, because he really radiates optimism. Immediately after this, she uses the Event Branch artifact and tells him to get the book. The Raven says that the book has now moved into his consciousness and always travels with him. At the same time, she freezes in the air and slowly approaches him. Hank tries not to make any sudden movements so as not to interfere with Raven recording the necessary data. Raven says that, fortunately, she brought some money with her during her visit to the city to pay for internet access. In this way, it connects to the World Wide Web of consciousnesses, and the book begins to shine even brighter. The Raven says that they only have 3 minutes left, and during this time they need to complete everything that needs to be done. She warns him that he should not look around and try to touch things that he is not supposed to. After taking a few steps, Hank discovers a giant, terrifying mutated eye staring straight at him. Hank can't believe that such creatures live in these places and takes a few steps back. Raven scolds him, saying that she is covering for him and can't do it forever. Hank understands that this book should automatically lead him to the necessary source of information. After this, he decides that it really isn't worth standing still, so he takes a few steps forward. He discovers a book that is supposed to help him find the necessary memories and filter them. As soon as he touches this book, he begins to feel a very strange sensation. A huge amount of strange, hair-like matter appears out of nowhere and reaches out to him. Hank doesn't have time to react in time as this matter gradually surrounds him. Hank realizes that he needs to somehow get out of this death trap. The Raven says that this is the librarian, but now there is no need to pay attention to him since he came on other business. Hank realizes he needs to dive into the memory book and states that he only has 50 seconds left. The first memory he comes across is not the most pleasant picture, which he decides to simply skip. Hank quickly gets to a memory where old man Jan is talking to his daughter-in-law. She says that now he has money and that at the end of the month they will transfer her to a good hospital. He also says that he has made arrangements with a specialist and that she will recover in a couple of years. Hank continues to flip through various memories and realizes that there is quite a lot of despair and hopelessness there. At some points, he comes across a strange picture, similar to a vision with distorted perception. This vision turns out to be the hand of the very same villain who launched the goldfish straight into the head of the unfortunate old man. After this, he continues to look through various memories to find some clues. Hank gets immersed in the process, practically losing track of time, of which he has little anyway. Raven warns him to speed up as he only has 20 seconds left. Hank continues to carefully study all the information he can get from the Book of Memories. Old man Yan had agreed in advance with his boss about who would be best to use for such a task. He spoke joyfully about how this boy would definitely be delighted when he was offered at least some kind of work. After some time, he was again taken under control, and he acted against his will. Hank continues to look through all possible memories that might be relevant to this situation. The Raven says that he must return immediately because he is now in a dangerous situation. Hank says that it is too early to go back since he has almost found what he needs. The hair gradually begins to narrow above him, preventing him from continuing his attempts to find what he needs. After some time, he finally manages to find the necessary trail. Hank feels a premonition of death, but understands that he must not stop under any circumstances. Several more images begin to appear before him, but the candle melts completely, and he is swallowed up by the hair. The monster forms a kind of mouth from this creepy hair and tries to swallow him whole. Hank continues to resist, but it turns out to be much more difficult than he initially expected. However, he decides to touch his secret weapon and chops his hair with an axe. In this way, he manages not only to cut through the monster's hair, but also to make his way out. A few seconds later, he finds himself back in his room, feeling very tired and exhausted. The Raven says that he has gone completely crazy, and that just a little more, and he would be completely swallowed up by the monster. She states that this thing has remembered him, and until he breaks through to the 5th rank, he shouldn't even go there. Hank, meanwhile, says that he finally found it and now knows what to do next. Raven takes out his phone and says that yesterday's events made front-page news. She emphasizes that there was an emergency organization and even the strongest warriors were involved. Hank says it's a lousy newspaper that says everything but the real truth. The Raven smiles and says that if you pay them, they will probably tell the truth at least sometimes. Raven adds that common people are quite easy to buy, but with the exalted, things are more difficult. After that, she hands him the phone and says that there is very important information here. She says that the identity of the main culprit has also been revealed, and he is a 3rd-rank exalted one. He used to be next to me. Then he disappeared without a trace for several years. However, when he returned, he had already become a member of the Green Day gang and erased his name. After this, only his call sign remained, and one can say that he is a very mysterious person. Hank says he never expected today's gangsters to look so decent. Raven says that his ability is called the Mocking Aquarium, and he definitely clashed with them. According to her, this person divides his substance into goldfish and introduces them into the bodies of other people. Hank listens carefully to these instructions, realizing that any information will be useful against him. Raven notes that his ability is called the Mocking Aquarium, and it allows him to control people. There are only 7 fish in total, and if you lose them, it will take a very long time to replenish them. Raven also states that this person has a stigma and a 3rd stage called the Tombstone. Thanks to her, he can create legendary living dead with amazing sensitivity. The peculiarity is that stigma allows one to dissolve one's own presence. Thus, He is practically invisible to ordinary people and can travel without fear. Raven also says that the downside is that he is clearly visible on cameras. Hank wonders if they really found that much information on him, and Raven says it makes sense. After this, Hank looks at his bank account and discovers that all the money is gone. He claims he worked like crazy, and she says that cheap is never good. The Raven says that if he is going to certain death, then the money will not be of any use to him anyway. Hank says that he didn't intend to go to certain death, and that he still has comrades. Raven says that Lindsay is in intensive care, and that relying on Irene's help is pointless. Hank comes to the conclusion that it is useless to involve regular police officers in this either, so he will have to find one. Raven says that he, of course, has one option that he can resort to. She encourages him to rise to the top of life with his newly acquired skills. Raven smiles and says that if he is satisfied with this arrangement, then she will only be happy for him. Raven emphasizes that she cannot even theoretically wish him anything bad. Hank doesn't respond to her offer and understands that he is unlikely to follow the path of a real villain. The Raven also says that he must understand one very important thing, since he now has a new status. She states that after he has become elevated, he can no longer bind himself to weak dogmas. She adds that for the exalted there is only one law, which sounds like the criminal code. Raven states that if she can teach him anything in this process, it is her first lesson. The Raven adds that in this world there is no place for pity and compassion for the weak, just as there is no place for cowardice. She emphasizes that if he does not control his destiny, then destiny will control him as it pleases. Hank realizes that these are indeed smart words, and comes to the conclusion that it is better not to go with the flow, but to set your own path. Raven asks if he felt the full extent of his sister's coolness, noting that she had been thinking about this phrase all night. Hank looks at her for a moment before saying that she might have a hidden power. He describes it as the ability to transform at a critical moment and become something fighting. Raven immediately denies this, claiming that such things only happen in stupid manga, not in real life. Hank says that's too much talk for a creature that won't go with him to chop down this scoundrel with an axe. Raven says that she has no weapons, but he can still count on the help of his allies. After a while, they reach Lindsay's expensive car and try to break the rear window to check the trunk. Hank picks around inside for a long time and says that now he will avenge Lindsay. From his point of view, this is an acceptable loss, and he will definitely understand it when he sees what was done to his car. Taking out a small suitcase, he says that he knew this thing would be here. Immediately after this, he opens it and finds a small amount of ammunition and a couple of types of weapons. Hank carefully examines the contents and says that all valuables were taken from here. The Raven asks how he got this suitcase. She shows the car keys and says that it was possible to open the trunk with this thing. Hank quickly takes the keys and then grabs Raven, a big smile appearing on his face. Getting behind the wheel, he says that now he doesn't even have to spend money on a taxi and can get where he needs to go on his own. Raven asks, and Hank says that he has played several Need for Speed games. He boasts that he passed them with good results, and Raven decides it's time to buckle up. Raven tries to jump out, but Hank says he will not tolerate doubts about his skills. Hank prepares to step on the gas, and Raven wheedles that she's feeling carsick. She also states that she will give him money if he agrees to call a taxi or contact other people. Hank says he doesn't have time to deal with such unimportant trifles. Immediately after this, he presses the gas pedal to the floor and knocks down the gate, which simply doesn't have time to open. After some time, they move to a small warehouse, which is located in the port under a cloudy sky. It starts to rain gradually, and visibility gets worse every minute due to large drops. The green sun decides to take refuge in one of the containers to restore its strength. He uses a fairly strong drug, but it causes him serious suffering. Once on the ground, he feels his wounds gradually heal, but his body continues to burn. In the middle of this process, blood starts to gush out of him and he spits it out. He realizes that he will have to recover with the help of a temporary serum made from silver blood. The recovery process with this drug can hardly be called pleasant, but he has no choice. After a short pause, he tries to pour as much of the contents into himself as possible at once. After this horrible substance begins to spread throughout his body, he feels even worse. Struggling to maintain his moral and mental state, he prepares himself for things to get even worse. Taking the phone, he says that he is wounded, and the bleeding still has not stopped, no matter what. He thanks his interlocutor for handing him the 4 of spades, Otherwise, he would have been caught already. He also says that there is no need to worry about his fate, since he will leave here at midnight and hide. He also promises not to leave the slightest trace of his presence, and burns all necessary documents. He's informed that everything in the surrounding area remains calm, and these events will not affect the overall picture. He advises him to act at his own discretion if the situation becomes critical. Meanwhile, the green sun burns the remaining evidence, after which he gets dressed and decides to leave here. Carefully stepping outside, he decides to replenish the goldfish losses. But this is not easy for him. Meanwhile, our heroes reach the required location and immediately crash into metal containers. The car crashes into them at full speed, but apparently no one was injured in the accident. Hank and Raven crash into the airbags and say that they finally got to the right place. Hank, without thinking twice, climbs out into the street and looks around in search of the enemy he has been looking for so long. The Raven immediately flies above him and asks if he was really so lazy to find a normal parking place. She adds that even if she said to act directly, there is no need to be so stubborn. Hank says that he doesn't have the straightest arms, so he wouldn't be able to park properly. Raven says it would be better if they stole Lindsay from the hospital and let him take over. Hank turns to her and says that they actually came here to hunt. After this, he looks around and wonders where the monsters went. Raven gives him some honest advice that he can simply call these monsters to come out. Hank actually decides to follow this dubious advice and turns to all the monsters in the area. He almost immediately comes into the green sun's sight, who doesn't understand who this strange idiot is. He decides to turn to one of his wards, who has been nearby all this time. The soldier holds the sniper rifle and continues to hold the target for observation. As with the other victims, he has a goldfish inside his head that controls him. However, after a few moments, his sight is focused on something incomprehensible, more like the eye of a creature. Green Sun wonders what the hell this is, and what the hell another monster is doing here. A raven lands on the barrel of a rifle and says that standing at such a height in the rain is a bad idea. After a while, she hands him a small trinket that looks like an iron thread. The Green Sun realizes too late what this trinket is really needed for. But now, he can no longer return. A few moments later, a powerful lightning bolt begins to strike this place, neutralizing the shooter. After this, a powerful water explosion is heard, which destroys the fish inside the shooter. This transfers some of the damage directly to the Green Sun, causing it to recoil in horror. The Green Sun realizes that the cursed bird has interfered with them again, just like with the last prayer in the church. He understands that he has no other options but to take the fight to these scoundrels. Immediately after this, he opens the doors and goes outside, looking around in search of his enemy. Hank quickly notices him and says that this scoundrel really came out to him. Green Sun asks him if he really came here alone, stating that it is nonsense. Hank says that he was definitely mistaken if he thought that he came here alone. After this, he takes off his hood and says that they have already met, but this meeting will be the last. After this, he shows off his amazing Vocaloid-like appearance to the main villain and the world. There is an awkward pause between them, as no one expected such a strange reception. Hank decides to take advantage of his enemy's confusion and immediately takes out his pistol to fire several shots. This sudden attack pays off, and he even manages to hit him right in the head. Hank is happy about the hit, but this does not mean that the enemy will die from a shot to the head. It turns out that this man has terrifying regeneration skills that prevent him from dying. This type of regeneration is characteristic of the undead and other creatures that came here from another world. The Green Sun looks at his opponent with his only remaining eye. But even so, he remains very dangerous. Hank fires a few more shots at the enemy, but he quickly disappears from sight. Hank tries to understand why he has become so fast and how this is even possible, because it is impossible to overtake him. He checks his ammunition, hoping he has spare rounds. Before he can adjust his tactics, someone shoots him straight in the back from a short distance. From the intense energy transferred by the bullet, he falls to the ground, feeling very badly bruised. He slowly gets to his feet and says that he is wearing a bulletproof vest, but it still hurts a lot. The Green Sun appears before him again, holding a pistol and preparing to continue shooting. Hank realizes that this man not only becomes invisible, but can also erase the memories of his enemies. For a second, he forgets why he came here, and it is because of this that he loses his vigilance and gets shot. However, as soon as he gets to his feet, his opponent comes into view again. but it is unclear where he is. Hank remembers that his opponent has abilities similar to those of a real ghoul. In Eastern European legends, ghouls are living dead who have risen from their graves. Raven had previously told Hank that the stigma of red gloves affects a person's subjective perception. Hank rises carefully to his feet and reflects on the fact that the rain is so heavy that he can hardly see anything. However, after some time, he realizes that he has one trump card that it would be a sin not to use. He quickly opens the Book of Fate and begins to rapidly study the information contained within. Thanks to the current descriptions in Hank's life, he guesses where the green sun is, and he shoots at him again. Smiling, he says that he finally managed to get into this pathetic creature. The green sun immediately disappears, assuming it's just a coincidence. But Hank turns to the book again. He is trying to figure out how he can once again deal this villain a serious defeat. After some time, Hank figures out in the book that his adventures do not end there. The book also reports that he hears the sound of a lion's roar and the powerful landing of a large animal. Hank notes that this is a rather strange interpretation. When suddenly he sees a giant lion right in front of him, he somehow miraculously dodges this attack and realizes that otherwise he would have turned into a shriveled corpse. And there hangs in the air one silent question that needs to be answered before moving on. Hank looks closely at this lion, who has absolutely no idea where he came from or what he's doing here. Hank suggests that perhaps this is another hallucination that is trying to deceive him with its plausibility. However, it quickly becomes clear that this lion is quite real and dangerous. If you look even a little closer at his face, you can see that there is a goldfish inside it. Hank finds himself alone with this dangerous opponent, who moves much faster than a human. The Raven says that this lion was brought to the exhibition from South Africa and needs to be removed. Hank is surprised that this ability allows him to control even animals that are unconscious. He also asks why she didn't tell him about this right away, because he should have taken this into account. Hank fires several quick shots at his opponent, but quickly runs out of ammo. He realizes that he now needs to take a long reload and dodges the lion's quick attack. He manages to load one bullet into the pistol, but the lion immediately turns around and hits him. Hank realizes that he can't dodge the blow of the massive clawed paw. This blow is so powerful that even when he tries to block it, he falls to the ground. However, the lion is in no hurry to finish him off and slowly approaches to sink his teeth. Hank tries to figure out what to do and suddenly discovers that his right arm is broken. Meanwhile, the lion prepares for another attack on his opponent and rushes forward. Hank decides to resort to his spiritual weapon and delivers a quick and powerful blow with his axe. This blow stuns even such a large cat for a while. But this is not a reason to celebrate victory. He quickly recovers and rushes forward again to grab his victim with his teeth. Hank decides to deliver another blow directly to the monster's head to try and knock the fish out of its body. Looking at him more and more closely, he realizes that there is a chance to stun him. Hank smiles and says that now these creatures will finally feel his true power. Thus, he deals another blow to the spiritual location of the goldfish by breaking its aquarium. Any damage this goldfish takes is immediately transferred to the green sun. It's not entirely clear what will happen to this scoundrel next, but he still has a few trump cards. Meanwhile, the lion falls to the ground, but his intention to destroy Hank is still obvious. Hank quickly looks around and discovers that there is a gun lying right next to him. He quickly raises it and points it at the lion's jaw to pull the trigger. A powerful shot rings out, causing the lion to fall to the ground with a dull thud. Hank knows he has one less problem to deal with, but now he has to push the heavy bulk aside. After he manages to free himself from this trap, he realizes that he has no more bullets. The green sun almost instantly materializes next to him and looks at him intently. Ignoring such serious damage, he asks if he really thought that would be the end of it. Another creature starts to quickly dart around Hank, and he doesn't have time to realize what it is. When he finally gets a chance to see what's happening, the creature has already disappeared from sight. This snake is also influenced by the goldfish, which is located somewhere inside. Green Sun feels more confident after being able to deal with his sworn enemy. Coming closer, he says that for a second it even seemed to him that he would lose to this scoundrel. After this, he grabs him by the head and declares that his stupid tricks are over. He looks at this strange mask for a while and realizes that such scoundrels have caused him a lot of trouble. He slowly approaches him, and his face begins to turn into some kind of demonic mask. He adds that there is no need to be afraid, since he will kill him and prepare something similar for him. He adds that he doesn't often have the opportunity to turn a risen one into bait. He then delivers a powerful blow, trying to knock the fish out of Hank's head, and adds that he will work for him. One can only imagine his disappointment when he finds out who really came to take revenge on him. Green Sun can't believe the extent of his failure, as this man completely destroys his control over the goldfish. He adds that it was a huge mistake not to kill him then, as he has now caused him even more problems. Smiling, he says that in any case, it is not too late to fix everything because now he is defenseless. Smiling, he says that now his existence will resemble only a pathetic parody of life. He promises that his soul will be devoured by the goldfish, as he is too weak to resist them. He promises to turn him into a living, empty corpse who will only hope to finally die. After some time, the energy lightning that contains the goldfish hits Hank's head directly. He hears a loud scream and feels his head splitting into hundreds of small pieces. The Green Sun happily says that he can scream as much as he wants, because soon, all his feelings will be absorbed. He also says that he no longer feels any pain, as his body is quickly giving up. Hank, meanwhile, tries to strain himself so as not to give in to the onslaught of this terrible artifact. Gradually, he becomes silent and stops all resistance, and the snake relaxes. The Green Sun begins to indulge himself with vain hopes that he has already won this battle. He starts laughing quite loudly, not worrying about attracting attention to himself. After this, he goes into a long period of reflection about how his career path turned out not to be so great. He wonders when he will be able to return to his native land and to the forests where he comes from. He reflects on how he has stayed too long and made too many sacrifices. However, after a few moments, he suddenly discovers that the snake has completely relaxed, and Hank is free. He looks at his opponent in surprise and cannot believe that he was able to cope. Hank says with a smile that he has a humidifier that affects the behavior of reptiles. He recalls Lindsay telling him not to let dry air affect his skin. Hank didn't take the advice at the time, but now he realizes how valuable the item was. He reflects on the fact that this bottle contains a whole 400 milliliters of gas that knocks out all the reptiles in a small radius. He also understands that if it weren't for the rain, which reduces its effectiveness, he wouldn't have waited so long to use it. After this, he finally approaches his enemy, while the latter declares that he will finish him off. Hank decides to use his spiritual weapon to deal with this enemy faster. However, before this, he stops briefly and says that he should not rush and should wait a little. Immediately after this, he sits down, swings his axe, and prepares to deliver a powerful blow. However, this blow does not land where one might expect, but directly on Hank's head. Green Sun looks at his opponent in surprise, while Goldfish begins to feel terrible. The waves of excitement that are transmitted to her are immediately transmitted to her owner. Hank says that if he came here, there is no point in sorting everything out so quickly. After this, he delivers another powerful blow with the part of the axe that hits him right on the crown of the head. This damage turns out to be very serious, causing Goldfish to be hastily evacuated from the body. Hank immediately rushes forward and, swinging, cuts the fish into several pieces. Immediately after this, the Green Sun aquarium suffers very serious damage that is almost impossible to repair. After this, he quickly takes aim at the unconscious reptile and destroys the fish inside it. Thus, the most valuable artifact that the Green Sun possessed is destroyed. In a gesture of desperation, he grabs the gun and declares that he will finish him off. Before Hank can react to this danger, several shots are heard. Fortunately, Green Sun does not have excellent aim due to the absence of one of his eyes. He begins firing in different directions, hoping that the density of fire will compensate for his inaccuracy. Hank quickly jumps to the side to avoid being hit by the swarm of metal bullets. However, he should act faster, because sooner or later he might get hit. The Green Sun continues to fire at him in irritation, while Hank hides next to the car. Several bullets hit the car's control system, after which the song, "The Man Who Sold the World," starts playing. Hank pauses for a moment, surprised by the song he hasn't heard in years. Green Sun is also in no hurry to continue shooting, since its ammunition has apparently run out. Besides the empty ammunition, he also lacks the strength to continue normal combat. He leans against the container and says that he no longer has the strength to continue active resistance. He admits Hank's victory and says that he can be put in any prison, but he will not say a single word. Hank, meanwhile, pays absolutely no attention to his words and listens attentively to the song playing. He says with surprise that he didn't expect to hear anything by David Bowie coming from this car. He smiles and says that Lindsay is the person with the strangest taste in the world. After this, he again decides to create the axe, saying that he never told the purpose of his visit. The axe begins to glow even brighter, and raindrops that fall on it immediately evaporate. Hank, meanwhile, turns to his enemy and says that it seems he misunderstood him. Taking a few steps towards him, he says that he did not come here at all to capture him. He rushes forward, delivering swift blows, and says that he came here simply to kill him. The green sun jumps back sharply, realizing that he is facing a real psychopath. Hank also says that even if he is killed, it will not be a serious loss for him. Green Sun smiles and says that he certainly didn't expect such an outcome. After this, he decides to use all the powers available to him to turn the tide of the battle. He rips open the clothes he's been wearing all this time and feels a small surge of strength. Hank also rushes to the attack, and they begin to fight to the death. Hank suddenly discovers that the man has a bladed weapon and takes this into account. The Green Sun delivers a powerful blow with his knife, and Hank somehow manages to block it and dodge it. However, such an aggressive attack from the Green Sun makes him jump aside. Hank realizes that if he had hesitated even for a second, he could have simply lost his arm. Meanwhile, the storm begins to intensify with each passing second, and lightning begins to strike above them. Green Sun observes Hank's weapon and realizes that this axe does more than just hurt physically. After this, he freezes for a moment and realizes that he needs to choose a tactic against this enemy. He rushes forward, realizing that he needs to cut off Hank's hand. Immediately after this, he tries to deliver a series of alternating blows to Hank at the limit of his abilities. Hank backs away, realizing he can't keep up with the man's movements. Once it is overturned, the situation becomes even more difficult. The Green Sun certainly doesn't plan to give up and continues to press on, giving him no time to rest. Hank dodges these blows, but he has to work hard to go on the offensive. After he manages to parry several blows, some semblance of parity arises between them. Green Sun muses that this guy looks like a newbie, but he moves too well. He still doesn't understand what he needs to do to defeat him. After a while, they cross their blades again, creating a powerful flash that turns into an explosion. Hank jumps to the side to break the momentum. He understands that all attacks come from the dead zone of the left hand, and that he is no match for him in hand-to-hand combat. After this, he decides that he needs to act a little differently and outsmart his opponent. He removes the axe from his hand, then dives sharply at the moment when they try to hit him again. This puts him in the best possible position to launch a counterattack. Time stands still for a few moments, so he decides to accumulate as much power as possible in his fist. He also tries to choose the best moment to strike in order to inflict maximum damage. After a while, he realizes that he needs to strike right now, and strikes straight at the enemy's body. This is enough to stun the Green Sun for a while and put it into a stupor. The Green Sun indicates that there is definitely a newbie in front of him, because his blows do not cause him any harm. And yet, after a few seconds, his body begins to give all sorts of signals that he is in great pain. Green Sun jumps back and wonders what he did to make him feel so much pain. Hank smiles as he talks about tear gas coming out of his fists and asks him how it feels. Hank says that his artifact allows him to transform the substance into invisible iron grains. He adds that as soon as the sand grains enter his blood through the wound, they turn back into the substance. Immediately after this, he launches another attack, taking advantage of the fact that the enemy is stunned. Green Sun can't do anything to counter this move, so Hank strikes for Old Man Yan. After this, he decides to perform another uppercut, which is dedicated to Lindsay's mentor. And finally, he realizes that the time has come to avenge himself, and he delivers another blow right to the center of the face. Green Sun still manages to maintain his composure and stabs Hank right in the arm. After this, he pushes him aside with a powerful kick and orders him to fall into the ground. Despite his sworn enemy, he asks him who the hell he is. Hank slowly rises to his feet and asks with a smile why he needs to know such things. After that, he smiles and says that perhaps he too will need the services of a gigolo. After a short pause, he gives his name and age and suggests that he may be a righteous high school student. The Green Sun cannot believe that in front of him is some recent schoolboy who cannot speak properly. Hank clutches his weapon and says it's time to end this show. After this, he heads towards the Green Sun and recommends that he continue their fight now. At a certain point, he abruptly changes the course of his attack and throws the axe forward. The green sun does not expect such a change in tactics and therefore does not have time to dodge the axe blow. Hank once again breaks the distance with his opponent and delivers a powerful head kick straight to his body. Thus, the green sun loses a significant part of its balance and now cannot control its body. Hank lunges forward, pins him against the car, and stabs him with a sharp object. The green sun feels a knife pierce his body with incredible shock and does not understand where it came from. Looking at the boy's shoulder, he realizes that the knife that was there is now inside his body. After this, incredible pain penetrates his body from head to toe, and he realizes that he is lost. Hank says with a tired smile that he finally dealt with this scoundrel. He takes a few steps to the side and says that this is the last time they will look at each other. Green Sun reflects on the fact that, apparently, some high school students are also very serious opponents. Hank watches as the car explodes in a brilliant burst of flame, scorching the green sun. Hank is overwhelmed by the shockwave and falls to the ground, unable to resist the pressure. The green sun also falls to the ground, as if the shockwave had not affected it at all. However, he shows no signs of life, so we can assume that our main character has won. Raven lands on Hank's shoulder and tells him that he did an amazing job of dealing with such a serious threat. Meanwhile, Hank looks closely at the burning body of his opponent and understands that all this is not just for nothing. Several more images appear before his eyes, which take him back to his distant childhood. He sees a little boy holding an axe and realizes that it was once him. Immediately after this, as a poetic gesture, he decides to quote a line from the song playing. Raven listens carefully to these lines and says that they sound really good. After this, our hero looks up to the sky and realizes that this battle is finally over. As the fire dies down, he hears approaching noises, and after a while, cars arrive. Hank tries to see who has come here, but he is hampered by the bright spotlights directed at him. He also hears the sounds of weapons being aimed, and understands that it is better not to move now. An investigator from the astral community approaches him and asks where the green sun has gone. Hank calmly replies that the green sun was killed in battle, and now his body is burning in this car. The soldiers carefully examine the destroyed body, and the investigator asks Hank who killed him. Hank says that it was actually a passing bald hero who came to the rescue at the last moment. Hank concocts a highly implausible superhero story while investigators review security footage. The investigator in charge of the situation reflects on the fact that, apparently, the one in front of him is elevated. He is also surprised that this boy single-handedly killed a third-rank employee of a military organization. After this, he is handcuffed in order to be transported further safely. They ask him if he has anything to say before he begins cooperating with the investigation. After a while, a familiar voice is heard, which announces that the special department has the right to supervise astronomers. Irene says that issues of detention, custody, and trial fall within the purview of another agency. Hank looks at her in surprise and realizes that she came to protect him just in time. Irene says that today he just represented the Astronomical Society and destroyed a dangerous enemy. The ordinary soldiers look at this boy in surprise and ask when he managed to become a member of the community. Irene says that when he agreed to participate in this operation, he signed a special contract. She adds that this contract lasts for 1 month and has not yet expired. She states that she will provide all the necessary explanations, but now asks them to let him go. The investigator smiles and says that this is the first time he has heard her address him with such respect. After this, he turns to Hank and tells him that he needs to not get cocky and continue to improve. After a while, they are left alone with Irene and her maid, and an awkward silence falls between them. Irene calmly throws the contract aside as if it were just a pathetic and useless piece of paper. Hank reminds her that she was going to leave for a distant province to conduct further business. Irene says she lied to him because she felt he was hiding something from her. She also claims that this is why she put a tracker in his pocket in order to track him. Hank is surprised and says that this is very unexpected and doesn't quite understand when she managed to do this. After a while, Irene tosses him a small piece of paper, which he catches with great difficulty. Hank looks at the piece of paper, wondering what it is. Irene says that this is his ID, and that he is now the executive secretary. Hank understands that this is a pretty serious position and will probably pay a lot of money. Irene says that she doesn't care what he's hiding, but if he doesn't want to go to jail for murder, he has to work for her. Hank asks if this is recruitment, and Irene states that it is not recruitment, but punishment. Smiling, she says that, in essence, He will do all the dirty work and participate in operations. Hank looks at the girl in shock and realizes that he is now doing the same job as Lindsay. Irene turns around and drives away, telling him to be prepared for a lot of work. After a while, she freezes, because there is one more thing she would like to tell him. There is a dramatic pause between them after this, as Hank doesn't fully understand what all this means. However, in the end, she tells him that they haven't seen each other for a long time, after which she finally leaves. After a while, we are transported to the New City Library, where a huge amount of knowledge is stored. Irene moves calmly along these corridors to find the information she needs. She finally gets to the professor and says that there are still as few people here as before. Smiling, the man says he is glad she came here and asks if she would like some coffee. Irene states that she would like to drink her coffee without sugar, after which she notices a small envelope. The professor says that he has prepared the results of her investigation. After that, he pours coffee and adds that she can definitely handle these documents herself. Irene accepts a cup of coffee from him, then picks up a small folder to look at it. Irene reflects on the fact that the Order of Saviors and the Charity Fund have been destroyed, but there is another force behind it. She understands that if it were a strange relic from abroad, the case could have been closed much earlier. She sincerely wonders whose hand is reaching out to this city and trying to do strange things here. She carefully studies the additional information that is here and is genuinely surprised. She realizes that she didn't expect it to be such a deep story with such twists and turns.